also happened, so Eli's lackluster performance there drops his grade down a bit. Grade B-. Super Bowl 43, Santonio Holmes. Holmes won this award thanks to his monster performance on the game-winning drop, which was capped off with the famous toe-tap touchdown that is arguably the greatest catch in NFL history. Once you include a catch of that magnitude along with 9 catches of 131 yards overall, it was a somewhat easy decision to give him this award. Grade A-. Super Bowl 44, Drew Brees. Brees had an interesting Super Bowl performance. He dinked and dunked his way to a very efficient performance, but this game will always be remembered more for New Orleans' onside kick to start the second half and Grayson Fuller's pick six off of Peyton Manning to seal the game. An easily forgotten outing by a legendary quarterback. Grade B+. Super Bowl 45. Rodgers.
In the name of the Emperor, peace!
Nobody can deny
On the ground, we'll change the batteries. Continue the assault. Reinforcements are coming.
still boggles the mind and defies reality. Thanks for being MVP performance. Flacco's 3 touchdown passes all came in the first half to help Baltimore get out to a huge lead that they barely hung on to win. Shout out to the Superdome Lights operator too. Grade B+. Super Bowl 48, Malcolm Smith. Much like Larry Brown and Dexter Jackson before him, Malcolm Smith remains one of the all-time most random Super Bowl MVPs. That's not to say his award wasn't deserved, although he was pretty much in the right place at the right time on his 69-yard pick six, nice, and fumble recovery. He also had 10 tackles for good measure. Congrats to Malcolm. Grade C. Super Bowl 49, Tom Brady. Super Bowl 49 was a classic Brady performance. He was bad for the first 3 quarters, committing 2 turnovers to help put his team in a 10-point hole, but he got it going in the 4th quarter with tons of short throws to rally his team to a late lead. I would have seriously given consideration to Malcolm Butler for Super Bowl MVP, considering the fact that he literally made the biggest interception in NFL history, as well as 3 pass deflections. However, Brady came through big in the clutch, so whatever, I guess. Grade A-. Super Bowl 50, Von Miller. Miller had one of the greatest defensive performances of all time in Super Bowl 50 to help carry Peyton Manning's corpse to his 2nd ring. Miller had 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles, one of which was recovered for a Denver touchdown, and another which set up Denver's offense deep inside Carolina territory. Simply put, Miller was sublime. Grade A+. Super Bowl 51, Tom Brady. Ah yes, Super Bowl 51, the game that still pisses me off more than any other game in sports history. Brady was pretty bad through 3 quarters once again, including a brutal pick 6, and generally looked rattled. But then he did what he does best in the 4th quarter and overtime, throw a bunch of short, quick passes, as well as willing his opponent to completely melt down to lead a historic comeback. As much as I hate Brady, and as much as I hate Atlanta for choking away this game, it must be said Brady took advantage of his opponent's mistakes better than anybody, and he deserves credit for that. It makes me puke. Fuck the Falcons for this. Grade A. Super Bowl 52, Nick Foles. Foles channeled his inner Joe Flacco to lead one of the greatest what-the-fuck playoff runs ever in 2017, capped off with a brilliant performance in Super Bowl 52 that included 373 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and a memorable touchdown catch on the Philly special. Foles was simply unreal in this game, dropping dimes left and right. Even his 1 interception was a throw that should have been caught. Not even Brady's luck was powerful enough to overcome the sheer size of Foles' penis. Legend. Grade A+. Super Bowl 53, Julian Edelman. Super Bowl 53 was a terrible game between 2 teams that shouldn't have even been there. But alas, somebody had to win Super Bowl MVP, so who better than Edelman, who was suspended for the first 4 games of the 2018 season for PED use. Edelman did his usual shit where he got wide open somehow on big downs to the tune of 10 catches and 141 yards. A very good performance from a gritty, hard worker, sneaky, athletic gym rat. Grade B-. Super Bowl 54, Patrick Mahomes. A great example of a quarterback winning Super Bowl MVP by default. Mahomes was pretty bad through 3 quarters before finally waking up in the latter part of the 4th to lead Kansas City to victory. Overall, Mahomes Mahomes had 3 touchdowns total, but also 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles. It was a pretty sloppy performance, and quite frankly, he was lucky his defense stiffened up in crunch time. No offense to men with erectile dysfunction, and that Jimmy Garoppolo missed Emmanuel Sanders on a huge throw late in the fourth quarter. Grade D. Super Bowl 55, Tom Brady. Brady's efficiency was great in this blowout win over Kansas City, as he continued to execute his patented dink and dunk shit that for some reason defenses could never figure out. This was one of the worst Super Bowls ever to watch, and Brady really didn't do anything impressive or jaw-dropping, but the motherfucker's style of play was just ruthlessly effective, and I hate it. I hate that this guy will likely be the GOAT forever. I'm gonna inject lots of marijuanas now. Thanks. Grade A-. Super Bowl 56, Cooper Kupp. When including the postseason and team accomplishments, Cooper Kupp had arguably the greatest season by any wide receiver ever in 2021, and he capped it off with a clutch performance in Super Bowl 56. He had 8 catches for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown reception, as well as a clutch 7-yard run on 4th down on the game-winning drive. Simply put, Kupp is a monster. An unstoppable monster that you want your daughter to date. If you see this, Cooper, please date my daughter. Okay, fine, I don't have a daughter, but if I did, I'd like you to date her. Grade B-. In this video, I'm going to name the best player to wear each number in NFL history. I don't expect you to agree with all my opinions, but you will respect them. Enjoy. 00, Jim Otto. It takes balls to wear number 0, but you can get away with it if you're a 10-time All-Pro like Jim Otto. Number 0, Johnny Oleski. Not much to choose from here, so this 2-time Pro Bowler from the 50s will have to suffice. Number 1, Warren Moon. 9-time Pro Bowler, almost 50,000 yards and 300 touchdown passes, despite not getting a shot in the NFL until he was 28 due to racism. Imagine his stats if he had started earlier. Number 2, Matt Ryan. He's goofy looking and boring without any wow traits, but he's made 4 Pro Bowls, won a league MVP, has huge counting stats, and would be a future Hall of Famer if not for a few fluke plays in Super Bowl 51. Number 3, Russell Wilson. He's corny and gives off serial killer vibes, but he has the best deep ball in NFL history, a Super Bowl ring, and is a 7-time Pro Bowler whose career isn't close to being over. Number 4, Brett Favre. He wasn't the most trustworthy quarterback in the clutch or with the cell phone around female employees, but he's unquestionably a legend who helped revitalize Green Bay with 11 Pro Bowls, 3 MVPs, and a Super Bowl ring. Number 5, Donovan McNabb. One of the best quarterbacks of the 2000s and a big reason why I became an Eagles fan, but sadly he wasn't a good big game quarterback. If he had won a few more NFC championships or Super Bowl 39, he might have had enough to get into Canton. Number 6, Jay Cutler. An average guy born with a rocket arm. He played like he didn't give a shit, and he should have been a lot better than he was, but he made a ton of money and fucked lots of women, so I don't think he has any regrets. Number 7, John Elway. The ideal quarterback you draw up in a lab. His production on the field doesn't quite live up to the narratives that old heads wax about him, but he played 16 years and put up 51,000 yards and threw for 300 touchdowns while starting 5 Super Bowls and winning 2 of them. A well-deserved Hall of Famer. No disrespect to all pro women respect to Ben Roethlisberger. Number 8, Steve Young. He didn't become a full-time starter until he turned 30, but he still managed to make 7 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pro teams, win 2 MVPs, and have the best Super Bowl performance of any quarterback ever. One of the best scramblers ever, which is surprising considering he's white. Number 9, Drew Brees. Over 80,000 passing yards, 571 touchdown passes, 13 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro team, and a Super Bowl MVP. By far the best quarterback to never win an MVP, and might be the best player ever to not win an MVP. Remarkable consistency. Number 10, Fran Tarkenton. Not talked about as much as he should be because he played forever ago and never won a Super Bowl, but he basically retired with every major passing record in 1978, won MVP in 1975, and led Minnesota to 3 Super Bowls. Number 11, Julio Jones. Larry Fitzgerald might have the longevity and valiant stats over Julio, but at their best, there's no question Julio is better. 7 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pro selections, as well as the highest receiving yards per game in NFL history. He doesn't score as many touchdowns as you'd like, but physically he has everything you could want in a receiver. Number 12, Aaron Rodgers. That's right, the guy with 7 rings doesn't get the nod here. Why? Because I have 2 working eyes. Rodgers' career efficiency numbers are otherworldly, but it's not just that. It's that he combines that otherworldly efficiency with the ability to make any throw to any part of the field off of any platform at any time. He won't end up with the most rings or have the highest counting stats due to sitting on the bench his first 3 years and other injuries, but I've never seen any quarterback capable of doing more with football than Rodgers. It's just a shame his defenses and teammates have let him down so many times in the playoffs. Number 13, Dan Marino. It speaks to Marino's talent that despite never winning a Super Bowl, he still commands immense respect in a rings-happy culture. His 1984 season remains the best season any quarterback has ever had, and he retired with every major passing mark imaginable, except interceptions. If he played nowadays, he would be in contention for MVP every single year, and it's not too far-fetched to say he would average close to 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns a season. Number 14, Dan Fouts. A highly underrated quarterback who is more remembered as a shitty commentator nowadays instead of a Hall of Fame quarterback. Made 6 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pro teams, and should have won MVP in 1982 as well, but was robbed by a kicker. He never made a Super Bowl, but he was arguably a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the game for the better part of a decade. Number 15, Patrick Mahomes. The choices came down to Bart Starr or Patrick Mahomes, and no offense to Bart Starr, who was clutch and executed his role in Lombardi's system well, he isn't in the same universe as Mahomes in terms of talent. Mahomes' first 3 seasons were arguably the best 3-year start to a career ever for a quarterback, and although he has taken a step back in year 4, there's no reason to believe it's permanent. He already owns an MVP, a Super Bowl ring, and Super Bowl MVP, and can do anything on the football field, except control his interception luck, I guess, and his brother dancing on TikTok. Number 16, Joe Montana. He benefited from a tremendous system and the genius mastermind of Bill Walsh, but his resume is unassailable. 8 Pro Bowls, 4 Super Bowl rings, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and 2 MVPs. Before Brady came around, he was the guy many considered the GOAT quarterback with a knack for coming through in the clutch. On a per-throw basis, he's arguably the best postseason quarterback of all time, and without question, the best Super Bowl quarterback of all time. Number 17, Philip Rivers. A meme nowadays for having funny faces and having lots of sex with his wife to produce kids. But beneath all the snark was a very good quarterback and a borderline Hall of Famer. He never won an MVP or even made a Super Bowl, but he did make 8 Pro Bowls and finished with over 63,000 yards and 420 touchdown passes. Not bad, although he was usually terrible in the clutch. Number 18, Peyton Manning. 14-time Pro Bowler who has the most first-team All-Pro selections of any quarterback ever and the most NFL MVPs of any player ever. He broke the single-season touchdown pass record twice, each time with a different team. He led 2 teams to multiple Super Bowls and won a Super Bowl with each. His detractors will say he wasn't as good in the playoffs, and that's true to an extent, but his regular season excellence is so off the charts, he has to be in everybody's top 3 quarterbacks ever at a minimum. Number 19, Johnny Unitas. 10 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, 3 MVPs, a 2-time world champion, and 1-time Super Bowl champ. Unitas was considered the GOAT quarterback until a guy named Montana rolled around in the late 80s. One of the very few old-timers who would translate to today's era seamlessly. Number 20, Barry Sanders. Super close choice between him or Ed Reed. Probably the most well-liked NFL player ever. 10 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros, and a 1997 co-MVP. One of the very few running backs you would pay to watch. Would have blown away the all-time rushing record if not for retiring at age 30. Number 21, Deion Sanders. Another extremely close call between Sanders and LaDainian Tomlinson, but I ended up giving Sanders the nod. 8-time Pro Bowler, 6 All-Pros, and a 1994 Defensive Player of the Year. He almost single-handedly swung the power balance in the league in the mid-90s between the 49ers and Cowboys, winning back-to-back Super Bowls in 94 and 95. The ultra-rare shutdown corner that comes along once every 25 to 30 years. Number 22, Emmitt Smith. Sure, he was helped out tremendously by the Cowboys' offensive line, but you don't become the all-time leading rusher without talent. He lasted forever at a position with a short shelf life. Won 3 Super Bowls, made 8 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pro teams, and won an MVP and Super Bowl MVP in 1993. Number 23, Troy Vincent. Hipsters will say Devin Hester, but I'm taking Vincent, who excelled as an every-down player. He made 5 Pro Bowls, was named first-team All-Pro once, and ended his career with 47 interceptions. Number 24, Darrelle Revis. This might be a controversial choice, as I admit guys like Champ Bailey, Willie Brown, Willie Wood, and Ty Law all had better longevity than Revis. But nobody, and I mean nobody, with the possible exception of Deion Sanders, was as good as Revis was at his best. He made Hall of Fame level wide receivers in their primes look like scrubs. It was otherworldly to watch, and he gets my vote here. Number 25, Richard Sherman. 5 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pros, and a Super Bowl champ, a key member of the best defense of the 2010s. He's known for being cocky and arrogant, but he almost always backed it up with his play. Number 26, Rod Woodson. 11 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros, a Super Bowl champ, and the 1993 Defensive Player of the Year. Finished with 71 interceptions, good for 3rd all-time, and had 17 career return touchdowns, also good for 3rd all-time. Excelled at both corner and safety. Underrated. Number 27, Steve Atwater. 8-time Pro Bowler, 2 All-Pros, and a 2-time Super Bowl champ. Finished with 24 interceptions as a free safety, known as a ferociously hard hitter, and was finally inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2020. Number 28, Marshall Faulk. Adrian Peterson might be the best pure runner of all time, but Faulk more than makes up for that by being arguably the most complete back of all time. 7-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, who won the 2000 MVP and a Super Bowl in 1999. He won Offensive Player of the Year for 3 straight years from 1999 to 2001. Had over 12,000 yards and 100 rushing touchdowns, and over 6,800 receiving yards and 36 receiving touchdowns. Number 29, Eric Dickerson. 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, and the 1986 Offensive Player of the Year. He still holds the single-season rushing record he set in 1984. Led the NFL in rushing yards 4 times and rushing yards per game 5 times. Finished with 13,259 yards and 90 touchdowns on the ground. Number 30, Terrell Davis. Only played 4 full seasons, but sure made the most of them. 3 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pros, a 1998 MVP, 2 Super Bowl wins, and a Super Bowl MVP. Averaged 142.5 rushing yards in 8 playoff games. Was helped out by his zone blocking scheme, but was a legitimately great player nonetheless. Number 31, Donnie Shell. 5 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pros, won 4 Super Bowls with the Steelers in the 1970s. Ended with 51 interceptions, which is top 35 of all time. Number 32, Jim Brown. 9-time Pro Bowler, 8 All-Pros, 3 MVPs, and an NFL champion. He only played 9 seasons, but led the NFL in rushing yards and rushing yards per game in 8 of them. Led the NFL in touchdowns 5 times. Similar to Wilt Chamberlain a bit in that a good portion of his dominance can be explained due to him being so far ahead of his peers athletically, aka he beat up on a bunch of unathletic white dudes. Number 33, Tony Dorsett. 4-time Pro Bowler and 1-time All-Pro. Super Bowl champion who finished with over 16,000 yards from scrimmage and 90 touchdowns. A better pure talent than Emmitt Smith and the best running back in Cowboys history in my opinion. Number 34, Walter Payton. 9 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, a Super Bowl champ, and 1977 MVP. Currently second all-time with 16,726 rushing yards and 110 touchdowns. 11th all-time in total touchdowns. He was the perfect back who excelled in every facet of the game. Can also play quarterback in a pinch if needed. Still has more career touchdown passes than Johnny Manziel. Number 35, Ionis Williams. A Hall of Famer with 8 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pros on his resume. Shutdown corner with great ball skills. Finished career with 55 interceptions, 23 fumble recoveries, and 13 return touchdowns. Played most of his prime on bad Cardinals teams, so he gets vastly overlooked. Also had 6 interceptions in 6 playoff games. Number 36, Leroy Butler. 4 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pros, and a Super Bowl champ. Still the only member of the NFL's 1990 All-Decade team to not be in the Hall of Fame. Finished with 38 interceptions and 20.5 sacks. Started the Lambeau Leap. 37, Jimmy Johnson. 5 Pro Bowls and 4 All-Pros, who finished his 16-year career with 47 interceptions. Number 38, Eugene Daniel. One of the worst numbers ever in terms of star power. Daniel never made a Pro Bowl, but he did last 14 years in the NFL and finished with 38 interceptions. Number 39, Steven Jackson. A 3-time Pro Bowler on a lot of shitty Rams teams in the late 2000s, early 2010s. He finished with over 15,000 career yards from scrimmage and 78 touchdowns. Number 40, Mike Haynes. I'm somewhat cheating on this one, no offense to Tom Brady, since Haynes only wore number 40 for half of his career. But the Hall of Famer made 6 Pro Bowls and 28 interceptions while wearing number 40 before moving on to the Raiders and wearing 22 for the rest of his career. Number 41, Eugene Robinson. The guy who famously got arrested the night before the Super Bowl for trying to solicit sex from an undercover cop was actually a damn good player. He made 3 Pro Bowls, won a Super Bowl in 1996, and finished with 57 interceptions. Not a man of faith, though. Word to Castellanos. Number 42, Ronnie Lott. 10-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, and 4-time Super Bowl champ. One of the hardest hitters in NFL history and also the most feared. Finished his stellar career with 63 interceptions. Good for 8th all-time. Also has a hot daughter, so good job on that, Ronnie. Number 43, Troy Polamalu. Hall of Famer and an 8-time Pro Bowler and 4-time All-Pro. A 2-time Super Bowl champ and the 2010 Defensive Player of the Year. His instincts at the strong safety position are matched only by Ed Reed. Finished with 32 interceptions and 12 sacks. Number 44, John Riggins. A Hall of Famer made just 1 Pro Bowl and an All-Pro team, but finished with over 11,000 rushing yards and 104 rushing touchdowns. He also did it while being white, which is a huge handicap at the running back position. Number 45, Dave Grayson. He played just 10 seasons but made 6 Pro Bowls and 4 All-Pro teams. Finished with 48 interceptions. Number 46, Tim McDonald. Played 13 seasons and racked up 6 Pro Bowls and 40 interceptions. Also won a Super Bowl with the Niners in 1994. Number 47, Mel Blount. A Hall of Famer and 5-time Pro Bowler and 2-time All-Pro. The 1975 Defensive Player of the Year and a 4-time Super Bowl champ. He was so physical in coverage that he got a rule named after him that lasts to this day. Finished with 57 interceptions. Also wears a cowboy hat during sex, I assume. Number 48, Stephen Davis. A 3-time Pro Bowler who led the NFL in touchdowns and rushing yards per game in 1999. One of the best running backs in the league from 1999 to 2003 and finished his career with over 8,000 rushing yards and 65 touchdowns. Number 49, Bobby Mitchell. A 4-time Pro Bowler and 1-time All-Pro. A Hall of Famer who finished his career with over 10,600 yards from scrimmage and 83 touchdowns as well as 8 combined punt and kickoff return touchdowns. touchdowns. He truly did it all. No offense to Tiger Woods. Number 50, Mike Singletary. A Hall of Famer, 10-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and a 1985 Super Bowl champ. The best player on the most famous defense of all time, the 85 Bears. What more do you need? Number 51, Dick Butkus. He was healthy for just 8 seasons, but in those 8 years, he made 8 Pro Bowls and 5 All-Pro teams. Probably the most feared hitter of all time, but not just a mindless brute. He finished with 22 interceptions and 27 fumble recoveries, which are both excellent numbers for a middle linebacker. Number 52, Ray Lewis. A Hall of Famer, 12-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champ, Super Bowl 35 MVP. Over 2,000 tackles, 31 interceptions, 41.5 sacks. Number 53, Mick Tingelhoff. That's right, folks. A guy named Mick Tingelhoff makes this list. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler and 5-time All-Pro who never missed a single game in 17 years with the Vikings. Number 54, Brian Urlacher. Hall of Famer who was an 8-time Pro Bowler and 5-time All-Pro. The 2005 Defensive Player of the Year. Finished with over 1,300 tackles, 22 interceptions, and 41.5 sacks. All while looking like Johnny Sins. Incredible. Number 55, Junior Seau. A Hall of Famer who was a 12-time Pro Bowler and 6-time All-Pro. Over 1,800 tackles, 18 interceptions, and 56.5 sacks. Seau hung on a little too long towards the end to chase the ring, but he was unquestionably the best linebacker in the NFL during the 1990s and just barely gets my vote over Derek Brooks. Number 56, Lawrence Taylor. Hall of Famer and 10-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and 1986 MVP. Finished his career with 142 sacks and countless more pressures. An absolute piece of shit human being, but there's no denying he is most likely the greatest defensive player ever. Number 57, Ricky Jackson. A Hall of Famer, 6-time Pro Bowler, and 1994 Super Bowl champ. Finished his stellar career with 136 sacks and 8 interceptions. Number 58, Jack Lambert. A 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champ, and 1976 Defensive Player of the Year. Mean and nasty, but talented linebacker who finished his Hall of Fame career with 28 interceptions and 23.5 sacks, along with countless tackles for the famous Steel Curtain defense. Number 59, Jack Ham. An 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, and 4-time Super Bowl champ. Imagine having Lambert and Ham as your linebacker duo. No wonder Pittsburgh ruled the 70s. Ham finished his Hall of Fame career with 32 interceptions and 25.5 sacks. And, oh yeah, lots of tackles. Number 60, Larry Grantham. Oh, so you don't know the famous Larry Grantham, huh? Well, pick up a history book, you lazy sack of shit. This guy made 5 Pro Bowls and 5 All-Pros, and he won a Super Bowl with the 1968 Jets. That's fucking awesome. Number 61, Nate Newton. A 6-time Pro Bowler and 2-time All-Pro who won 3 Super Bowls in the 1990s as a member of the Great Wall of Dallas. Number 62, Jim Langler. A Hall of Famer who made 6 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pro teams while helping to lead the Dolphins to back-to-back Super Bowls in the early 70s. Number 63, Gene Upshaw. A surprisingly loaded number featuring greats like Jeff Saturday, Willie Lanier, Mike Munchak, Dermontti Dawson, and Leroy Selman. You can't go wrong picking any, but I chose to go with the guy who made 7 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, and won 2 Super Bowls. Number 64, Randall McDaniel. A Hall of Famer who made 12 Pro Bowls and 7 All-Pro teams. Only missed 2 games in 14 years. That'll work. Number 65, Gary Zimmerman. Hall of Famer who was named to 7 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pro teams and a Super Bowl champ. Looks like a trucker. Number 66, Alan Faneca. A Hall of Famer who made 9 Pro Bowls and 6 first-team All-Pros and was a Super Bowl champion. Also looks like a trucker. Number 67, Bob Keckenberg. A 6-time Pro Bowler and 1-time first-team All-Pro who was a key member of Miami's back-to-back Super Bowl championship teams in the early 70s. Number 68, Will Shields. A Hall of Famer who made 12 Pro Bowls and 2 first-team All-Pros. Never missed a single game in 14 years. Number 69, Jared Allen. A 5-time Pro Bowler and 4-time All-Pro, finished with 136 sacks and will eventually get into the Hall of Fame. Nice. Number 70, Jim Marshall. He only made 2 Pro Bowls but finished with 130.5 sacks and never missed a game in 20 years. Number 71, Walter Jones. A Hall of Famer who made 9 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 4 times. Author of arguably the most devastating block on YouTube. Seriously, look up Walter Jones' block after this video. Number 72, Dan Deerdorf. Hall of Famer, 6-time Pro Bowler and 3-time All-Pro, known more for his long career as a broadcaster. Number 73, John Hanna. A Hall of Famer, 9-time Pro Bowler and 7-time All-Pro. Considered by many who saw him play to be arguably the best offensive lineman ever alongside Anthony Munoz. Number 74, Bruce Matthews. A Hall of Famer, 14-time Pro Bowler and 7-time All-Pro. Was named All-Pro at right guard, center, and left guard at different points in his career. Number 75, Deacon Jones. A Hall of Famer, 8-time Pro Bowler and 5-time first-team All-Pro. Finished his career with 173.5 sacks and led the NFL in sacks 5 different times. Number 76, Orlando Pace. A Hall of Famer who made 7 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 3 times. A Super Bowl champ champ and the top offensive lineman on The Greatest Show on Turf. Number 77, Willie Roaf, a Hall of Famer who made 11 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 4 different times. Made the 1990s and 2000s All-Decade Team. Enough said. Number 78, Bruce Smith, Hall of Famer, 11-time Pro Bowler and 8-time All-Pro. The NFL's all-time sack leader and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He won 0 rings though, so I'm not sure if he was good or not. Number 79, Ray Childress, a 5-time Pro Bowler and first-team All-Pro who finished his career with 76.5 sacks. Number 80, Jerry Rice, a Hall of Famer, 13-time Pro Bowler and 10-time first-team All-Pro, a 3-time Super Bowl champ and Super Bowl MVP. The all-time leader in receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and yards from scrimmage. In my opinion, the best football player of all time, whose records are still untouchable today in a pass-happy league. Number 81, Terrell Owens, a Hall of Famer who made 6 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 5 times. Known as a bit of a head case, but he had the production to back up his mouth. 3rd all-time in touchdown catches and receiving yards. As proof of his toughness, he put up 122 yards in a Super Bowl with a broken ankle. Number 82, Jason Witten, a future Hall of Famer who made 11 Pro Bowls and 2 first-team All-Pros. Finished 4th all-time in receptions and 20th all-time in receiving yards. Was always open somehow, despite running a 6.540. Number 83, Ted Hendricks, a Hall of Famer who made 8 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 4 times. Won 4 Super Bowls and was named to the 1970s and 1980s All-Decade Team. A versatile linebacker who finished with 26 interceptions and 61 sacks. Number 84, Randy Moss, Hall of Famer who made 6 Pro Bowls and 4 first-team All-Pros. 2nd all-time in touchdown catches and led the NFL in touchdown catches 5 different times, including the single-season record mark in 2007. He had problems with his effort at times, but at his best, no wide receiver has ever put more fear into opposing defenses than Moss did. A top-tier receiver of all time. Number 85, Jack Youngblood, a Hall of Famer who made 7 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 5 times. Finished his career with 151.5 sacks and led the NFL in sacks 2 times. Number 86, Buck Buchanan, a Hall of Famer who was named to 8 Pro Bowls and 4 first-team All-Pros. A Super Bowl champion who finished his career with 70.5 sacks as a defensive tackle. Number 87, Rob Gronkowski, a 5-time Pro Bowler and 4-time first-team All-Pro. A 4-time Super Bowl champ and the best tight end of all time who made grown men look like little boys on a daily basis for almost a decade. He dealt with injuries throughout his career, so his counting stats aren't that of Gonzalez, Witten, or Gates. But anybody with 2 working eyes knows Gronk was the best of the bunch. He also helped Tom Brady not look like Andy Dalton for a long time. Number 88, Alan Page. One of the toughest numbers to pick from with Page, Gonzalez, Harrison, and Irvin, but I gave Page the nod. He was the best player on the famous Purple People Eaters defense, a 9-time Pro Bowler and 6-time first-team All-Pro, the 1971 MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. Finished with 148.5 sacks, despite primarily playing defensive tackle. Also, and I didn't factor this into my decision, but it's still awesome, he became a judge after his playing career was over. Talk about living a full life. What the fuck have you done? Number 89, Steve Smith, a 5-time Pro Bowler and 2-time first-team All-Pro. Probably the biggest psychopath to ever play the wide receiver position, and he had to be. At just 5'9", he still finished with over 1,000 catches, nearly 15,000 yards, and 81 touchdowns. Was also an All-Pro return specialist early in his career. Truly a great player. Number 90, Julius Peppers, a 9-time Pro Bowler and 3-time first-team All-Pro. All-Decade Team for both the 2000s and the 2010s. Finished his 17-year career with 159.5 sacks and 11 interceptions. Also returned 6 scores for touchdowns. Number 91, Kevin Green, Hall of Famer who made 5 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 2 times. Still ranks 4th all-time on the all-time sack list with 160 and led the NFL in sacks twice. Number 92, Reggie White, Hall of Famer, 13-time Pro Bowler and 8-time All-Pro. A Super Bowl champ and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. 2nd all-time in sacks with 198, the best defensive end in NFL history, and arguably the strongest man in NFL history. Routinely threw offensive linemen away like little kids. He recorded at least 11 sacks in 12 of his 15 seasons. Number 93, John Randall, a Hall of Famer who made 7 Pro Bowls and was named first-team All-Pro 6 times. Finished with 137.5 sacks despite being an undersized defensive tackle. Somehow went undrafted. Number 94, DeMarcus Ware, a soon-to-be Hall of Famer who made 9 Pro Bowls and 4 first-teams All-Pros and a Super Bowl champion. Finished career with 138.5 sacks and led the NFL in sacks twice. Number 95, Richard Dent, a Hall of Famer who made 4 Pro Bowlers and 2 All-Pro teams. A 2-time Super Bowl champ and Super Bowl MVP. A key member of the infamous 85 Bears and finished his career with 137.5 sacks and 37 forced fumbles. Number 96, Cortez Kennedy, a Hall of Famer who was named to 8 Pro Bowls and 3 first-team All-Pro teams. Member of the 1990s All-Decade Team and the 1992 Defensive Player of the Year. He played on some below-average Seahawks teams in his prime, so he didn't get as much attention as his play warranted. Number 97, Bryant Young, a 4-time Pro Bowler and 1-time first-team All-Pro, a Super Bowl champion and 1990s All-Decade Team. Finished his career with 89.5 sacks, and over 600 tackles from the defensive tackle position. Number 98, Robert Mathis, a 5-time Pro Bowler and 1-time first-team All-Pro, a Super Bowl champion who finished his career with 123 sacks and a ridiculous 54 forced fumbles. Led the NFL in forced fumbles 3 different times. And finally, number 99, Aaron Donald, a 7-time Pro Bowler and 6-time first-team All-Pro who has already won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards before finishing his age 30 season. He already has 91.5 sacks and 20 forced fumbles, the best defensive tackle in NFL history, and consistently ruins offensive game plans at a level very few ever have. He has literally never not been elite so far in his career. Tony Romo is known today for being paid a shitload of money to announce NFL games for CBS. I would say this could make people forget about his old job, but that really wouldn't be true. Being the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys brings plenty of fame and attention, especially when you're good. From the time Romo first became the Cowboys starting QB in 2006 at the age of 26, he produced very, very well. But while Romo consistently produced well when he was healthy and won a very respectable 61% of his regular season starts, postseason success eluded the Cowboys during his tenure. Because of the team's failure to even make a conference championship game with Romo under center, and some unfortunate mishaps and big moments on Romo's part, Romo had the reputation as a choke artist. But was Romo really a fraud winning big moments, or do fans just have a selective memory? This video aims to find out. Enjoy. Romo became the Cowboys starter midway through the 2006 season after spending 3.5 years as a little-known undrafted backup quarterback from Eastern Illinois. Romo is easily the most talented overlooked QB prospect to ever take Drew Bledsoe's job, which he did officially starting in Week 8. In his first career start, the Cowboys destroyed the Carolina Panthers 35-14. But Romo's first career loss came the next week versus Washington, where he set up Mike Vanderjagt with a 35-yard game-winning field goal attempt. However, the field goal was blocked, and on the return, a Cowboys player committed a face mask, so Washington got 15 extra yards to kick a 47-yard game-winning field goal. This type of fluky loss would be a theme throughout the rest of Romo's career. The Cowboys went 6-4 in Romo's 10 starts, finishing 9-7 overall. The offense finished an excellent third in points per drive, while the defense lagged behind, finishing 23rd in points allowed per drive. Much like with other notable quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Dan Marino, and Peyton Manning to a slightly lesser extent, the consistent defensive support was never really there for Romo. Despite the 9-7 record, the team secured a wildcard matchup on the road versus Seattle, and it's a game that formed many narratives about Romo's career. The first half was pretty nondescript until Romo led a 76-yard touchdown drive just before halftime to give the Cowboys a 10-6 halftime lead. The two teams traded touchdowns in the third quarter to give Dallas a 17-13 lead going into the final stanza. Romo led the team on a field goal drive to take a 20-13 lead with 10 minutes left, and Dallas's defense held firm on a goal line stand, giving Romo the ball back at his own 2-yard line. But that's when things started getting weird. Romo completed a screen pass to Terry Glenn, who got stripped and ended up giving Seattle a safety to make it 20-15. Seattle capitalized with a 50-yard touchdown drive to take a 21-20 lead with 4 minutes left. Romo held firm though. With help from Julius Jones, he drove the team 70 yards to Seattle's 2-yard line to set up a chip shot go-ahead field goal. Then it happened. Romo famously botched the snap, and the kick was aborted, effectively ending the game and the Cowboys' season in a 21-20 loss. Ironically, Romo was this close to being the hero, as he alertly picked up the ball and ran towards the end zone. If not for Seattle's Jordan Babineau making a clutch tackle, and Cowboys kicker Martin Gramatica throwing a horrific block, maybe the narrative around Romo would be different, but there's no way around it. In this particular instance, Romo choked. Heading into the 2007 season, there were some concerns as to whether or not Romo was a fluke, but Romo quickly showed he was legit. He threw for over 4,200 yards, 36 touchdowns, and helped the Cowboys dominate all season long to the tune of a 13-3 record and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. The Cowboys looked primed to make it back to another conference championship game for the first time since 1995, and their divisional round foes would be the divisional rival New York Giants, led by crayon eater Eli Manning. There was some controversy leading up to the game, as Romo had taken then-girlfriend Jessica Simpson on a trip to Cabo to have absolutely disgusting and immoral premarital sex. Excuse me while I throw up. The game started with Eli Manning finding Amani Tuma for a 52-yard touchdown. but Romo and the Cowboys would eventually settle down, leading 2 long and time-consuming touchdown drives to go up 14-7 with a minute left in the first half. But again, the Giants would respond with a huge touchdown drive in the final minute to go into halftime tied at 14. Dallas took a 17-14 lead after another time-consuming field goal drive to start the second half, but on their next possession late in the third quarter, there was a huge drop by Patrick Clayton that ended the drive prematurely. But even if the pass was caught, in no way would the game have been over. The Giants would go on to add another touchdown off of a short field to go up 21-17 early in the fourth quarter. The Cowboys got 3 more offensive possessions but failed to score on any of them. The game ended with Romo heaving a desperation pass on 4th and 11 from the Giants' 23-yard line, and it was picked off in the end zone to seal the 21-17 loss for Dallas. Unlike the season before, there wasn't a singular play that would lead someone to blame Romo, but the Cowboys' offense was ineffective when it mattered most. The much ballyhooed offensive line didn't hold up in the fourth quarter. Romo took some untimely sacks and grew a little impatient by looking for deep throws downfield when he really didn't need to. I'm not going to say Romo choked, since this Giants defense proved they were legit when they dropped their nuts all over the historic 2007 Patriots offense in the Super Bowl, but this certainly wasn't an example of Romo playing great and being let down. The 2008 Cowboys had high expectations as they were returning much of the same team from the year before. Up to this point, Romo had been durable, but 2008 would see the first of his many injuries. He ended up missing 3 games with a broken pinky finger on his throwing hand. The Cowboys went 1-2 in those 3 games, and this would obviously end up being crucial to their playoff chances. In the 13 games Romo did play in, he was once again productive, albeit not as much as the year before. The Cowboys went 7-2 in his first 9 starts and were sitting at 8-4 going into the last 4 games of the season. This is the year where another unfavorable Romo narrative emerged, that he wasn't good in the month of December. Whether or not that's true for his career is still debatable, but in regards to 2008, it was absolutely true. The Cowboys went 1-3, and Romo had a disastrous 5 touchdown, 6 interception ratio and a disastrous 67.9 passer rating. The cherry on top of the shit Sunday was a brutal 44-6 season-ending loss to Philadelphia in the final week, which could have put Dallas in the playoffs had they won. There were close losses during the year to that season's 2 Super Bowl contestants, Pittsburgh and Arizona, that certainly haunted the Cowboys. They lost 30-24 in overtime to Arizona following a blocked punt and blew a 13-3 lead in the fourth quarter to Pittsburgh to lose 20-13 after a brutal pick-6 thrown by Romo with 2 minutes left. Romo did lead 2 game-winning drives to balance those losses out, but still, at this point, the Romo era was 3 years in, and while he had nice stats and a hot girlfriend, he had 0 playoff wins, and the narratives of him being a choker were beginning to solidify. 2009 was a bounce-back year for both Romo and the Cowboys. The team finished 11-5, won the NFC East, and, for what would be the only time in the Romo era, had a top 12 defense, finishing 2nd in points allowed per drive. Romo had a great year, throwing for almost 4,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and just 9 interceptions. He was also named to the Pro Bowl for the 3rd time. But even with all his success, there were some missed opportunities. The team blew a 1-point lead with 3:40 left in a 33-31 loss versus the Giants, a 10-point second-half lead in a 17-10 loss versus the Broncos, which ended with the offense stalling out on Denver's 2-yard line, 2 missed field goals in a 31-24 loss to the Giants again, as well as another missed field goal in a 20-17 loss to San Diego. There were also good moments in the clutch, however, as Romo would throw game-winning touchdowns in the fourth quarter and overtime versus Kansas City, Washington, and Philadelphia. The Cowboys still hadn't won a playoff game since 1996, however, and the pressure was immense for Romo to end that drought. He would play a huge role in doing so, as the Cowboys destroyed rival Philadelphia 34-14 at home in the wildcard round with Romo playing very well. Romo finally had the playoff monkey off his back, but the joy would be short-lived, as the next week the team would get their shit pushed in on the road by the Minnesota Vikings by a score of 34-3. The game was a complete team failure by Dallas. Romo committed 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, and an interception. The offensive line gave up 6 sacks, the special teams missed 2 field goals, and the defense allowed Brett Favre to have one of the best games of his Hall of Fame career, throwing for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 134.4 passer rating. Through 4 seasons as an NFL starter, the notion of Romo being a very good player who repeatedly came up short in big moments had some merit. But would it change moving forward? The 2010 season was a lost season for both Romo and the Cowboys. Cowboys, as Romo suffered a season-ending broken collarbone early in Week 7 versus the Giants. But even before Romo went down, the team was sitting at just 1-4 and had suffered a brutal 13-7 loss to Washington, which ended with the offense stalling out at the Washington 13-yard line as time expired, a 27-20 home loss to Chicago, a crushing 34-27 home loss to Tennessee, which featured a wild fourth quarter where Romo led 2 game-tying drives but also 2 interceptions, one of which set up Tennessee with a 5-yard touchdown drive. Romo's final full start of the season was another close 24-21 loss to the Vikings. Romo once again led a game-tying touchdown drive early in the fourth quarter to tie it at 21, but threw another brutal INT to set up the Vikings in great field position to kick the game-winning field goal with 4 minutes left. Cowboys ended up finishing the year at 6-10, prompting human corpse Jerry Jones to fire Wade Phillips in mid-season and replace him with the most infamous clapper on the planet, Jason Garrett. 2011 was one of Tony Romo's best seasons. He threw for almost 4,200 yards, 31 touchdowns, and just 10 interceptions with an amazing 102.5 passer rating. The Cowboys' offense was very good, finishing top 8 in both yards and points per drive. Yet, despite Romo's elite production, the team finished just 8-8 and missed the playoffs. The biggest culprit, of course, was the defense, which was a below-average 19th in points allowed per drive. The other reason is Romo having to play hero almost every week. There were some weeks where he would pull the games out, such as when he led game-winning drives versus San Francisco, Washington, twice, and Miami. But as always with Romo, people better remember the times he lost. Week 1 versus the Jets is a prime example. Romo's final stats looked great, but in the fourth quarter he had a brutal fumble on the Jets' goal line where a score would have most likely sealed the game. And with the game tied at 24 following a blocked punt return touchdown for the Jets, not Romo's fault, Romo ended up throwing an interception, Romo's fault, to set New York up with a game-winning field goal, which lost the game for Dallas 27-24. There was also a 34-30 home loss to Detroit where the team blew a 27-3 second-half lead. Romo threw 2 pick-sixes in the third to help Detroit cut the lead to 27-17. Dallas was up 30-17 heading into the fourth, but after 10 straight Detroit points and Dallas leading 30-27 with 4 minutes left, Romo threw another interception which set up the Lions with great field position. They would capitalize on the field position to take a 34-30 lead, which they held on to. There were also several losses where Romo did his part to put the team in position to win, but was let down late in the fourth by his defense and coaching. There was a 16-13 blown lead with 2:30 left and a 20-16 loss to New England. But the 2 worst losses were a 19-13 overtime loss to Arizona, where Romo set up kicker Dan Bailey with a game-winning 49-yard field goal as time expired. Bailey actually made the kick, but it was negated by Jason Garrett calling a timeout. Bailey got iced by his own coach as he missed the retry. The game went into overtime with Arizona scoring the game-winning touchdown on the first possession. But the absolute worst and most gut-wrenching loss on the season was at home to the New York Giants. Not just for how it happened, but because it would end up blowing the team's playoff chances. Romo was phenomenal that game, throwing for 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Dallas had a 34-22 lead with 6 minutes left, but they allowed New York to score 2 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. Dallas would miss a field goal as time expired to lose 37-34. Romo's injury bug popped up again in the penultimate game versus Philadelphia, where he suffered a bruised hand and only played 1 series. The Cowboys lost that game 20-7 to set up another de facto playoff game in the last week of the season versus the Giants, but the team came out flat, and the eventual Super Bowl champion Giants steamrolled them 31-14. 2012 saw Romo take a step back statistically, throwing 19 interceptions and having a 90.5 passer rating. But overall, the Cowboys stayed stuck in neutral, finishing 8-8 once again. The Romo-led offense remained effective, finishing top 10 in both points and yards per drive, but the defense regressed even more, finishing a putrid 25th in points allowed per drive. Much like 2011, there were moments of clutch brilliance and disgust for Romo. He actually led the league in fourth quarter comebacks with 5, which kept the Cowboys from being a complete dumpster fire, but as always, there were also some memorable gaffes. The first came in Week 6 versus the eventual Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. Dallas was trailing 31-23 with 5 minutes left. Romo led a clutch 80-yard touchdown drive, but didn't convert the 2-point conversion after Des Bryant dropped it. More on this later. However, the Cowboys recovered the onside kick, and after a defensive pass interference penalty, the Cowboys were in position to win the game with a 51-yard field goal. But kicker Dan Bailey missed it, it, and Dallas lost 31-29. A few weeks later, at home versus the Giants, another memorable loss would occur. Romo threw 4 interceptions, but he was still a few inches away from being the hero. As with Dallas trailing 29-24 with 16 seconds left, he lofted a pass to Des Bryant in the end zone from 37 yards away. It was initially called a touchdown, but further review showed Bryant's hand landed slightly out of bounds, negating the catch. Dallas was unable to score on the next few plays, and the 29-24 loss was final. The next week saw a disappointing 19-13 road loss to Atlanta, although it wasn't as crushing as the aforementioned losses. A 34-31 overtime home loss to New Orleans would end up being another devastating blow to the team's playoff chances. Romo was phenomenal, throwing for 416 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, and he also led 2 clutch fourth-quarter drives to tie the game at 31. Dallas got the ball to start overtime, but went 3 and out. New Orleans, led by future Hall of Fame quarterback Drew Brees, drove 72 yards downfield for the game-winning field goal to seal the 34-31 loss for Dallas. Despite all of these heartbreaks, Dallas once again had a chance to sneak into the playoffs in the final week. All they had to do was beat Washington on the road. Romo was shaky, throwing interceptions on the first 2 possessions, and the offense overall was sluggish. The Redacted had a commanding 21-10 lead with 11 minutes left, but Dallas fought back, cutting it to 21-18 and getting the ball back with 3:33 left in the game. Romo had a chance to send Dallas into the playoffs, but instead he just reinforced his choker label by throwing a brutal interception. Washington would capitalize off of it to score a touchdown to take a 10-point lead with a minute 15 left to seal the 28-18 season-ending loss for Dallas. Tough scene. The 2013 season for the Cowboys was pretty much an exact carbon copy of 2012. Romo was once again very good, throwing 31 touchdowns and leading an elite offense, which finished 4th in points per drive. The defense, however, continued to be atrocious, finishing 30th in points allowed per drive. Once again, Romo had his moments in the sun late in games, leading 4 game-winning drives, including a memorable one on the road versus Washington with a broken back that sidelined him in the final week of the season. Again, though, with Romo, it's never that simple, as the Cowboys once again found a way to lose several games in heartbreaking fashion. The most memorable was a legendary 51-48 home loss to the Peyton Manning-led Denver Broncos. Romo had a phenomenal day, throwing for over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, but he threw a costly interception late that set Denver up for the game-winning field goal as time expired. There was a 17-16 loss to Kansas City, which saw Romo fail to lead a go-ahead drive on 3 fourth-quarter possessions when trailing 17-13. There was also a 30-21 loss to San Diego, where the Cowboys had the ball down 23-21 with 12 minutes left, but were unable to do anything with it before giving up a 56-yard touchdown. Keeping in tradition with the rest of Romo's career, there were several losses that were just plain old shit luck. The aforementioned loss to Denver was probably the worst, but a 31-30 loss to Detroit is right up there. Romo threw 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to give Dallas a 10-point lead both times, and led a field goal drive that put Dallas up 30-24 with a minute left. But unfortunately, his defense gave up an 80-yard touchdown drive in the last minute. Then there was a 37-36 home loss to the Aaron Rodgers-less Green Bay Packers. Dallas had a commanding 36-24 lead with 8 minutes left, but Green Bay responded with an 80-yard touchdown drive to cut it to 36-31 with 4 minutes left before Romo threw a terrible interception to set Green Bay up at midfield. Green Bay capitalized with another touchdown to go up 37-36 with a minute 34 left. Having a chance to redeem himself, Romo would throw another interception to end the game. As mentioned earlier, Romo would miss the de facto playoff game in the last week of the season versus Philadelphia due to a back injury. Dallas lost that game 24-22 to once again finish 8-8 and out of the playoffs for the 4th straight year. The 2014 season would be both beautiful and heartbreaking for Cowboys fans. Behind an elite offensive line and with the help of an all-pro running back in DeMarco Murray, Romo had the best season of his career, finishing with 34 touchdowns, just 9 interceptions, and a league-leading 113.2 passer rating. Romo also led 4 game-winning drives and was truly phenomenal all year long. The offense was a machine, finishing 2nd in points per drive, although the defense continued to be mediocre, finishing just 17th in points allowed per drive. Romo missed 1 game due to his consistent back issues, which Dallas lost to Arizona 28-17. This loss would end up being crucial to the Cowboys' playoff seeding, as they missed out on a first-round bye despite a 12-4 record due to a conference win percentage tiebreaker with the fellow 12-4 Seattle Seahawks and Green Bay Packers. However, the team did win the NFC East, so they got a home playoff game versus the Detroit Lions. They extracted some revenge for their 2011 and 2013 13 losses with a memorable 24-20 win, capped off by Romo throwing a game-winning touchdown pass to Terrence Williams with a few minutes left. Although Lions fans will only remember the game for a controversial defensive pass interference flag being picked up in the fourth quarter that could have extended a Lions drive while they had a 2017 lead. Nevertheless, the Cowboys advanced to the divisional round to face the Green Bay Packers, led by NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers. The Packers took an early 7-0 lead thanks to a Rodgers touchdown pass, but Romo responded with 2 touchdown passes in a row to take a 14-7 lead. This began what is a pretty overlooked portion of the game. Dallas had a blocked field goal, went up 14-7 with 34 seconds left in the first half. Then Green Bay scored a field goal just before halftime to make it 14-10, a 6-point swing. On Dallas's first drive of the second half, DeMarco Murray fumbled on what would have been a probable touchdown. Green Bay took the turnover and capitalized with another field goal. That's a potential 10-point swing. So instead of being up somewhere like 24-7, Dallas was only up 14-13. Dallas would add another touchdown to go up 21-13, but Rodgers would roar right back with another touchdown pass on 3rd and 15 to make it 21-20 Dallas heading into what would be a very memorable fourth quarter. Dallas punted and Green Bay drove down the field again for another touchdown as Rodgers fired a missile between 2 Dallas defenders to take a 26-21 lead. There were 9 minutes left still though. However, on 2nd and 8, Romo took a sack and then threw a completion short of the sticks on 3rd down to set up a 4th and 2 at the Green Bay 32-yard line with 4:42 left. Romo went for the home run, lofting up a beautiful throw to his all-pro wide receiver Bryant, who leaped over a hapless Sham Shields to grab it and set Dallas up at the Green Bay 1-yard line. But after a Green Bay challenge, it was determined that Bryant did not properly secure the ball before it hit the ground, thus overturning the call and ruling the pass incomplete. Dallas would never get the ball again, as the NFL MVP would convert 2 clutch 3rd downs on Green Bay's final drive to run out the clock and send the Cowboys home with a brutal 26-21 season-ending loss. Nobody would know it at the time, but this game would, for all intents and purposes, be the last meaningful game of Tony Romo's career. After 2014, Tony Romo would start just 4 more games in 2015 and make just 1 appearance in relief in 2016. The already injury-prone Romo suffered a broken collarbone 2 games in 2015, but would come back later that year just to re-break it again. He still owned the starting job at the beginning of the 2016 preseason, but suffered yet another major back injury in the opening preseason game and lost his job to unheralded rookie Dak Prescott. It may have seemed longer, but Romo was the Cowboys' starting quarterback for just 8 seasons, and even that's being generous considering he didn't become a starter until midway through 2006. So the question remains, was Tony Romo just a choking loser, or was he an unlucky great quarterback? Like most things, the answer lies somewhere in between. When it comes to athletes, most narratives are formed early in their careers, and Romo did truly fail to execute in big spots consistently from 2006 to 2009. While he would still have his down moments in the clutch from 2011 to 2014, he was also much more consistent, and in all honesty, was the only thing preventing Dallas from being a bottom dweller by leading several game-winning drives every year. As I outlined in the video, those 2011 to 2013 Cowboys teams were just a few plays here and there from winning double-digit games and making the playoffs each year. As was the case with other quarterbacks I've taken an in-depth look at like Rodgers, Breeze, Marino, and Peyton, Romo never had a consistent defense to support him. Only one time did he have a top 10 defense, and in 5 of his 8 seasons as the Cowboys' primary starter, he had a below-average defense. Could this have led to him forcing some throws in big moments? I don't doubt it. The numbers say, though, from 2016 to 2014, Romo was one of the best clutch quarterbacks in the entire league in the fourth quarter and overtime when the game was tied or his team was down 1 to 8 points. There's also the factor of bad luck. While I don't give Romo a pass for botching the snap versus Seattle in 2006 or his disastrous playoff losses to the Giants and Vikings in 2007 and 2009, I believe he was robbed in 2014. And like Dirk Nowitzki in the NBA, it takes just one magical playoff run to change the narrative. Nobody knows if the Dez play had been ruled to catch whether or not Dallas wins that game or even goes on to win the Super Bowl. But that was Romo's moment, and you can't help but feel it was taken away from him. Romo is also unique in that his career started late and ended relatively early. As in today's NFL, having just 8 seasons as a primary starter on your resume is pretty short. When he finally seemed to be in the perfect situation where he didn't have to carry the offense, his body broke down. There's no denying when he was healthy, Romo was a very good quarterback who would have had more postseason success if he wasn't stuck with so many terrible defenses. Much like with Drew Brees, Romo gets unfairly penalized for carrying some very very lackluster teams to mediocre records, which should actually be a mark in his favor, not against it. He didn't play long enough to be a Hall of Famer like some Cowboys fans say, but he should be remembered as a very good quarterback who overcame shaky clutch moments early in his career, 2006 to 2009, to become a mostly reliable clutch quarterback in the back half of his career from 2011 to 2014. But the fact is, those chokes early in his career still happened, and combined with his long list of injuries, Romo will have to settle for being just a very good quarterback and not an all-time great. Fuck Tom Brady. Matt Ryan has had a very good NFL career with the Atlanta Falcons. He's made 4 Pro Bowls, won an NFL MVP, and thrown for almost 56,000 yards and 350 touchdowns. But despite his consistently productive seasons, the Falcons have been inconsistent when it comes to winning. How much blame does Ryan deserve for this? Is he a Hall of Famer? This video hopes to answer both of those questions. Drafted 3rd overall out of Boston College, Matt Ryan had one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history in 2008. He didn't put up crazy counting stats, just 3,400 yards and 16 touchdown passes, but his efficiency on a per-throw basis was remarkable, especially considering how he was drafted by a team with one of the worst offenses in the league a year prior. He deservedly won Rookie of the Year and piloted the Falcons to a top 8 offense with the help of new addition Michael Turner, who ran for 1,700 yards and 17 touchdowns. Like any rookie quarterback, Ryan had some growing pains along the way, with several truly ugly performances and road losses to Philadelphia, Tampa, and Carolina. Nevertheless, Ryan led 4 game-winning drives, helping the team to finish 11-5 and earn a wild-card playoff spot. Their opponent would be the eventual NFC champion Arizona Cardinals, and Ryan's playoff debut was rocky at best, as he averaged under 5 yards per attempt, took a safety, threw 2 interceptions, and also lost a fumble which was returned for an Arizona touchdown. Despite Ryan's inconsistent play, the Falcons had a 17-14 halftime lead, but on the opening drive of the second half, Ryan's aforementioned fumble return touchdown put Arizona up 21-17. Following 2 Atlanta punts, Arizona then expanded the lead to 28-17 following a 14-play, 76-yard touchdown drive. The teams would go scoreless until Ryan was sacked in the end zone for an Arizona safety to make it 30-17 with 12:44 left. Ryan would lead Atlanta on a touchdown drive to make it 30-24 with 4:19 left, but Arizona's Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner completed passes of 15, 25, and 23 yards on the final drive, including a clutch 3rd and 16 conversion with 2:17 left to run out the clock. Ryan's rookie season ended on a sour note, but overall it was a massive success for Atlanta, as they had found a franchise quarterback to lead the way for the next 15 years. Going into 2009, Ryan was expected to take the leap into elite status, but instead he was a massive disappointment. In terms of era-adjusted stats, Ryan was actually below average in every metric besides touchdown percentage and sack percentage. Perhaps injury had something to do with the steep decline from his stellar rookie year, as Ryan essentially missed 3 games, but he was not the same player. Despite Ryan's mostly subpar play, the Atlanta offense was still very good, once again finishing 8th in points per drive. Atlanta went 8-5 in the 13 games Ryan was healthy for, but overall finished just 9-7 and missed the playoffs. The defense was subpar, finishing 19th in points allowed per drive. Ryan had 3 game-winning drives, but also played like shit in a winnable road loss to New Orleans, in which he threw a brutal 4th-quarter interception in New Orleans' end zone, down 28-24, which New Orleans scored a touchdown off of to pull away late. He was also subpar in road losses to Dallas and Carolina. He did lead back-to-back touchdown drives late versus the New York Giants, only to lose in overtime without touching the ball, but Atlanta ultimately missed out on a playoff spot, largely due to 2 losses which Ryan missed with injury. A blowout 34-7 loss to Philadelphia, and a 26-23 heartbreaker to the Saints at home, which saw Atlanta fail to score on 2 drives down 26-23 in the 4th quarter. 2010 saw the Falcons waltz to a 13-3 record and the 1 seed in the NFC behind Ryan's first Pro Bowl season. He threw for 3,700 yards, 28 touchdowns, and just 9 interceptions for a 91 passer rating, although his efficiency on a per-throw basis still wasn't what it was during his rookie year. Ryan led the NFL in both 4th-quarter comebacks and game-winning drives, earning the nickname Matty Ice. Atlanta once again had a top offense, finishing 6th in points per drive, and the defense was solid for a change, finishing 7th in points per drive allowed. All was great until the divisional round versus Green Bay. The game started off well enough, with Atlanta taking a 7-0 lead after the first quarter and answering a Green Bay touchdown with a 102-yard kickoff return touchdown to go up 14-7 in the second. Then it was nothing but pain. Green Bay tied the game at 14, then Ryan threw an interception. Green Bay scored another touchdown to go up 21-14 with 48 seconds left in the first half. Then the backbreaker came. With 10 seconds left in the half at the Green Bay 35-yard line, Ryan threw a terrible pass that was intercepted and returned 70 yards for a Green Bay touchdown to give the Packers a 28-14 lead at halftime. After that, the game was never close. Aaron Rodgers had what is probably the best game of his historic career, going 31 of 36 for 366 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions, while adding a rushing touchdown on the ground. Green Bay at one point had a 42-14 lead in the fourth quarter before Ryan threw a garbage time touchdown. Green Bay added 2 field goals late to win the game in dominating fashion, 48-21. In addition to throwing 2 interceptions and a back-breaking pick 6, Ryan was also sacked 5 times and lost a fumble. Disgusting. Ryan had another very good season in 2011, throwing for over 4,000 yards for the first time in his career, while also having 29 touchdowns and a 92.2 passer rating. Falcons' offense remained effective, finishing 7th in points per drive, although the defense was below average once again, finishing 17th. Ryan had 3 game-winning drives, and although Atlanta finished 10-6 to make the playoffs, there were a few close losses that proved costly in terms of playoff seeding. A 16-13 road loss to Tampa, which saw Atlanta fail to score a go-ahead touchdown with 1st and 5 from the Tampa Bay 5-yard line with 4:30 left. A 26-23 overtime loss to New Orleans, which saw Atlanta fail to score a game-winning touchdown with 1st and 9 from the New Orleans 9-yard line with 14 seconds left. Atlanta then got 2 overtime possessions but failed to score on both. A 25-14 home loss to Green Bay, where Atlanta took a 14-0 lead early but failed to score a point over the last 48 minutes. Atlanta had the ball down 8 with 8:16 left in the fourth quarter, but Ryan took a sack and then threw an interception. There was a 17-10 road loss to Houston, which saw Atlanta with the ball at the Houston 29-yard line down 7 with 2:41 left in the game, but ended with an Atlanta turnover. Ryan's play in all of these losses left a lot to be desired. Nevertheless, Atlanta would face the eventual Super Bowl champion New York Giants in the wildcard round. Ryan was looking to reverse the trend of his extremely disappointing first 2 playoff games, but instead the narrative of him being a playoff choker would only grow. Atlanta's offense scored 0 points, and the only points of the game for the Falcons came on a safety. Ryan didn't throw an interception or fumble in this game, but he averaged just 4.9 yards per attempt. Atlanta's offense went 3 and out 5 times, turned it over on downs 3 times. 2 times, Ryan failed to convert a 4th and 1 quarterback sneak inside the Giants' 25-yard line. Despite the offense shitting its pants, this was still a winnable game late in the third quarter. Eli Manning hit Hakeem Nicks for a 72-yard touchdown to break the game open. New York would add another touchdown in the fourth to win 24-2. Ryan had the best season of his young career in 2012, throwing for over 4,700 yards, 32 touchdowns, and a 99.1 rating. Ryan also had 4 fourth-quarter comebacks and 6 game-winning drives. He had a pass rating over 100 in 10 games, 7 games with 3+ touchdown passes, and if not for a brutal 5-interception game against Arizona, he might have won MVP. Atlanta's offense was elite, finishing 2nd in points per drive, and the defense was also good, finishing 10th in points allowed per drive. Overall, Atlanta finished 13-3 and secured the 1 seed in the NFC for the second time in 3 years. But nobody had doubts about Ryan's regular season prowess. Now it was time to show it in the playoffs, and beating the red-hot Seattle Seahawks, led by the number 2 defense in the league, in the divisional round would shut up the haters, at least momentarily. Outside of a Ryan interception, the first 3 quarters couldn't have gone better for Atlanta, as they took a 27-7 lead heading into the fourth. Then, you're not going to believe this shit, but Atlanta blew a seemingly insurmountable lead. Ryan threw a 2nd interception, then Atlanta punted on back-to-back drives. Seattle, led by superstar rookie quarterback Russell Wilson, reeled off 21 straight points to take a 1-point lead with 31 seconds left. But in the most clutch moment of his career, Ryan earned his Matty Ice nickname, completing a 22-yard pass and 19-yard pass on back-to-back plays to get Atlanta into field goal range. Atlanta's kicker Matt Bryant would nail the 49-yard field goal to take a 30-28 lead. Atlanta stupidly did an onside kick, so Seattle had one more chance at a Hail Mary, but it was intercepted. Atlanta had secured its first playoff win in the Matt Ryan era and would host the NFC Championship against the 49ers. The NFC Championship game game played out almost identical to the divisional round. Atlanta jumped out to an early 17-0 lead. San Francisco cut it to 17-14, but Atlanta responded with another touchdown to make it 24-14 at halftime. San Francisco scored a touchdown on its opening second-half drive to make it 24-21. Then the game became a comedy of errors. Ryan threw an interception on 2nd and 10 at San Francisco's 47. San Francisco would miss a 38-yard field goal, but Atlanta would give it right back when Ryan fumbled on 2nd and 9 at San Francisco's 28. San Francisco then fumbled it back on 2nd and goal from the Atlanta 5. Atlanta punted, and San Francisco finally capitalized to take a 28-24 lead with 8:27 left. Ryan would lead a time-consuming drive, which at one point had 1st and 10 at San Francisco's 16 with 2:23 left. Unfortunately, Atlanta would fail to do anything, turning it over after a Ryan incompletion with 1:13 left. Atlanta got one more Hail Mary attempt from the 41-yard line with 6 seconds left, but it fell short. Going into 2013, Matt Ryan was only 28, and Atlanta reloaded for what everybody assumed would be another deep playoff run. It turned out to be the exact opposite. Atlanta bottomed out with a brutal 4-12 record. The defense finished dead last in points allowed per drive, and although Atlanta's offense still gained tons of yards, it finished just 17th in points per drive. Ryan threw for 4,500 yards and 26 touchdowns, but also a career-high 17 interceptions for a mediocre 89.6 passer rating. Atlanta had so many close losses, you would have thought Phillip Rivers was their quarterback. Week 1 versus New Orleans, down 6 with 1:09 left. Atlanta had 1st and goal from the New Orleans 7-yard line, but Ryan threw an interception to lose. Week 3 versus Miami, Atlanta had a 3-point fourth-quarter lead, missed a 35-yard field goal, then gave up a game-winning touchdown on a 75-yard drive with 43 seconds left to lose the game. Week 4 versus New England, down 7 with 59 seconds left. Atlanta had 1st and 10 at the Patriots 13, but failed to score and lost 30-23. Week 5 versus the Jets was perhaps the most embarrassing loss. Ryan threw a go-ahead touchdown with 1:54 left. The Atlanta defense then let Geno Smith drive 55 yards to set up a game-winning 43-yard field goal for the Jets as time expired to give the Falcons a 30-28 loss. Week 12 versus New Orleans, Atlanta had 2 drives in the fourth quarter down by 4. The first ended with a fumble at the New Orleans 22-yard line. The second ended with a missed 52-yard field goal with 2:24 left. Atlanta scored 0 points in the second half to lose 17-13. Week 14 versus Green Bay, up by 5 at the start of the fourth. Matt Ryan fumbled, setting up Green Bay for a 21-yard go-ahead touchdown drive to take a 22-21 lead. Got the ball back again with 44 seconds left and no timeouts, but Ryan threw a desperation interception to lose 22-21. Week 16 versus San Francisco. Atlanta had the ball at the San Francisco 10-yard line with 1:31 left, down by 3, but Ryan threw a terrible 89-yard pick 6 to lose 34-24. Week 17 versus Carolina. Atlanta had the ball at the Panthers 19, down 4 with 8:41 left, but settled for a field goal. They had multiple drives down 21-20, but got nowhere both times to lose the game. Matt Ryan made his 3rd Pro Bowl in 2014, throwing for 4,700 yards, 28 touchdowns, and a 93.9 rating. The Atlanta offense finished top 10 in points per drive, so the team must have done well, right? Nope. Atlanta finished 6-10, largely due to the defense once again being pathetic, finishing 30th in points allowed per drive. Despite having a porous defense, there were still several extremely winnable games Atlanta lost late. Week 4 versus Minnesota, Atlanta had a 1-point lead entering the 4th and had the ball down 7, but did nothing. Minnesota would add 2 field goals as Ryan threw 2 fourth-quarter interceptions to lose 41-28. Week 5 versus the Giants, Atlanta had a 3-point lead entering the 4th, gave up a touchdown drive with 10 minutes left to go down by 4. Atlanta then punted and turned it over on downs on their next 2 drives, while New York added 2 field goals to win 30-20. Week 8 versus Detroit, Atlanta had an 11-point lead entering the 4th. Detroit scored a touchdown to make it 21-19. Atlanta punted again, hitting Detroit at their own 7-yard line with 1:38 left. Detroit then went 63 yards, kicking a 48-yard game-winning field goal as time expired to win 22-21. Week 12 versus Cleveland, Atlanta trailed by 9 entering the 4th, but scored a touchdown and kicked a go-ahead field goal with 44 seconds left to take a 1-point lead. Atlanta's defense then allowed a 61-yard drive, which ended with a 37-yard game-winning field goal as time expired to lose 26-24. Week 15 versus Pittsburgh, Atlanta had the ball down 7 in the fourth quarter, but went 3 and out, never got the ball again, and lost 27-20. 2015 2015 would be another frustrating season for Atlanta under first-year head coach Dan Quinn. Ryan would throw for almost 4,600 yards and lead 4 game-winning drives, but he had just 21 touchdowns to 16 interceptions, while the Atlanta offense finished a mediocre 18th in points per drive, despite being 4th in yards per drive. The Atlanta defense improved from 30th to a mediocre 17th in points allowed per drive, and the season started off great as the team was 6-1 after 7 games. Then they collapsed, going just 2-7 over the last 9 games, which featured several heartbreaking losses. Week 8 versus Tampa Bay, Ryan led Atlanta to 10 straight points in the last 5 minutes to send the game into overtime. Tampa Bay kicked a field goal to go up 3, but Atlanta failed to score on their overtime drive to lose the game. Week 9 versus San Francisco, a memorable loss where new head coach Dan Quinn decided to kick a 19-yard field goal down by 4 with 3 minutes left, and Atlanta never got the ball again to lose 17-16. Week 11 versus Indianapolis, Atlanta had a 7-point fourth-quarter lead when Ryan threw a terrible pick-6 to tie the game at 21. Atlanta then had 2 drives with the game tied, but failed to score on both. Indianapolis kicked the 43-yard field goal with 57 seconds left, as Atlanta's final drive ended with an interception as time expired to seal the 24-21 loss. Week 13 versus Tampa Bay, Atlanta took a 19-16 lead off of a Ryan touchdown pass with 10:48 left. The teams exchanged punts, then Tampa scored a go-ahead touchdown with a minute 47 left to take a 23-19 lead. Ryan was then picked on the first play of the last Atlanta drive to lose the game. And finally, Week 17 versus New Orleans. The game tied at 17 with a minute 47 left. Matt Ryan threw a terrible interception to set up New Orleans with a short field, which they used to kick a game-winning 30-yard field goal as time expired to give the Falcons a 20-17 loss. For better or worse, 2016 will always be what the Atlanta Falcons and Matt Ryan are most remembered for. You already know how it ended, but you might have forgotten the journey along the way. Ryan had one of the greatest seasons by any quarterback ever, throwing for almost 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions, and a stellar 117.1 passer rating. He had a passer rating over 102 in 12 games, threw 3+ touchdowns in 7 games, and averaged at least 7.9 yards per attempt in every single game. Atlanta's offense was historically dominant as well, averaging 33.8 points per game and finishing first in both points and yards per drive. The Atlanta offense was so good it carried the team to an 11-5 record despite the defense being one of the worst in the league. Ryan and Atlanta's stellar offensive play continued into the playoffs as they throttled the Seahawks 36-20 in the divisional round behind Ryan's 338 yards and 3 touchdowns, then absolutely destroyed the Red Hot Packers 44-21 in the NFC Championship game behind Ryan's outstanding 392 yards and 5 total touchdown performance. Ryan deservedly won NFL MVP the night before Super Bowl 51, and it looked like he would be adding a Lombardi Trophy and Super Bowl MVP to his resume about midway through the third quarter of the Super Bowl, as he threw his second touchdown of the game to give Atlanta a dominating 28-3 lead over the favored New England Patriots. You guys know the rest from here. What happened over the final 23.5 minutes of Super Bowl 51 is so extreme and hard to believe that it made me question for the first time in my life whether or not pro sports were rigged. I could literally make an entire video just about the Falcons' chokes in this game, but that would be too painful. So I'll just highlight key moments that led to the Falcons' unprecedented meltdown. Number 1. Up 28-3, Atlanta's defense had New England on 4th and 3 at the 46-yard line with 6:04 left in the third, but gave up a 17-yard catch to a wide-open Danny Amendola. Number 2. Up 28-3, Atlanta's defense had New England on 3rd and 8 at Atlanta's 35 with 4:49 left in the third, but allowed Tom Brady to run for an easy 15-yard first down. New England eventually scored a touchdown to make it 28-9 with 2:22 left in the third. Number 3. Up 28-9, Atlanta had 2nd and 1 at New England's 32-yard line with a minute and a half left in the third quarter, but committed a holding penalty to push the ball back 10 yards to New England's 42. Ryan threw an incompletion on 2nd and 11, then on 3rd and 11 took a sack to push the team out of field goal range. Number 4. Up 28-12, Atlanta had 3rd and 1 at 36-yard line with 8:31 left in the game, but Devonta Freeman whiffed on a block to get strip sacked, setting New England up with the ball at Atlanta's 25-yard line. Number 5. Up 28-12, Atlanta's defense had New England on 3rd and 11 at Atlanta's 26 with 7:03 left in the game, but Falcons cornerback C.J. Goodwin fell down, giving Brady an easy first down throw to rookie wide receiver Malcolm Mitchell. Number 6. Up 28-18, Atlanta's defense gives up a 2-point conversion on a James White run. Number 7. Up 28-20, Atlanta got the ball down to New England's 22-yard line with 4:40 left following an incredible catch by Julio Jones. Atlanta then ran for -1 yards on first down to put the ball to the 23-yard line. Ryan then took a 12-yard sack on second down to push the ball back to New England's 35-yard line. Atlanta then committed a holding penalty to push the ball back to New England's 45-yard line. Then Matt Ryan threw an incompletion on third down, forcing another punt. How the fuck does this happen? Number 8. Up 28-20, Atlanta's defense had New England 1st and 10 from New England's 36-yard line with 2:28 left. Tom Brady threw a horrible pass that should have been picked, but the ball went through Atlanta quarterback Robert Alford's hands and somehow fucking ended up in Julian Edelman's hands for a 23-yard catch. Are you fucking kidding me? Number 9. Up 28-26, Atlanta's defense gave up another 2-point conversion. Number 10. Atlanta loses the overtime coin toss. Number 11. Tied at 28, New England had 1st and goal at the Atlanta 2-yard line. Tom Brady threw a terrible fade pattern to tight end Martellus Bennett. Atlanta linebacker Vic Beasley got his hand on the ball but failed to catch it. New England would score the game-winning touchdown on the next play. Considering how devastating the end to 2016 was, it's incredible the 2017 Falcons made the playoffs at all. Ryan had a better season than his numbers would indicate. 4,100 yards, 20 touchdowns to 12 interceptions for a 91.4 rating, which featured several fluky interceptions and dropped touchdowns. Atlanta finished 7th in points per drive, which is really good, but considering the team had the same personnel and offensive talent as the historic offense the year before, it was a bit underwhelming. Replacing offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, Steve Sarkisian didn't help matters, obviously. Defensively, Atlanta remained below average, finishing 20th in points allowed per drive. Atlanta finished 10-6, although there were once again several close losses that prevented the team from getting another first-round bye. Week 4 versus Buffalo. Ryan threw a touchdown to tie the game with 7:04 left. Buffalo responded with a field goal to go up 3 with 4:48 left. Then Ryan threw an interception, which Buffalo scored a field goal off of to go up 23-17 with 3:10 left. Ryan drove Atlanta to Buffalo's 10-yard line with 49 seconds left, but turned the ball over on downs to end the game. Week 6 versus Miami. Atlanta had a 3-point lead entering the 4th. Miami tied the game with 8:39 left. Atlanta punted, then Miami kicked a go-ahead field goal with 2:35 left. Ryan drove Atlanta to Miami's 26-yard line with 47 seconds left, but threw an interception to lose the game 20-17. Week 9 versus Carolina. Down 20-10 in the 4th quarter, Julio Jones dropped a wide-open touchdown on 4th and 7 that would have made it 20-17 with 8 minutes left. Atlanta would score a touchdown to make it 20-17 with 3:25 left, and got the ball back down 3 with 2:18 left, but turned it over on downs to lose 20-17. Week 13 versus Minnesota. Atlanta had a 9-7 lead entering the 4th quarter, but gave up a touchdown in the first play of the quarter to go down 14-9. Atlanta had 2 drives down 14-9. The first one ended in a punt, while the second ended with a missed 45-yard field goal with 5:04 left. Atlanta never got the ball back to lose 14-9. Despite these losses, the team went and put up an impressive 26-13 win on the road against the upstart Los Angeles Rams in the wildcard round. Their reward would be traveling to Philadelphia in the divisional round, led by backup quarterback Nick Foles. Atlanta's offense got off to a slow start, but seemed to right the ship after a Ryan touchdown pass put the team up 10-6 in the second quarter. Atlanta held on to a 10-9 lead at halftime following a fluky catch by Philadelphia, but Atlanta's offense overall was unable to get anything going, punting on all 3 third-quarter drives to fall behind 12-10 going into the 4th. Philadelphia would add another field goal to go up 15-10 with 6:05 left. Then Ryan led Atlanta on a 74-yard drive, including a clutch 4th down conversion to Julio Jones that set up Atlanta with 1st and goal at the Philadelphia 9-yard line with 1:19 left. Ryan threw 2 incompletions, then had a 7-yard throw to Julio to set up the deciding 4th and goal from the Philadelphia 2-yard line. On the final play, Ryan was flushed out of the pocket and threw up a difficult but catchable pass to Julio Jones that ended up going through his hands, ending the Falcons' season with a disappointing 15-10 loss. Matt Ryan had a stellar individual season in 2018, throwing for over 4,900 yards, 35 touchdowns, and just 7 interceptions with an excellent 108.1 rating. He didn't make the Pro Bowl, however, which was largely due to the Falcons finishing just 7-9 and missing the playoffs. Like much of Ryan's career, Atlanta's offense was great, finishing 4th in points per drive, but held back by a lackluster defense that finished 30th in points allowed per drive. Also, like most of Ryan's career, 2018 featured some excruciatingly close losses. Week 1 versus Philadelphia, Atlanta took a 2-point lead with 9:48 left, got the ball back with the 2-point lead, but punted. Atlanta's defense then gave up a touchdown and 2-point conversion with 2:19 left, then in almost an eerie repeat of the previous season's ending. The game ended with Ryan throwing an incompletion inside the Philadelphia 5-yard line to Julio Jones as time expired to lose the game 18-12. Week 3 versus New Orleans, Ryan was incredible, throwing for 374 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions for a 148.1 rating, including a 5-yard touchdown pass to put Atlanta up 7 with 6:58 left. But Atlanta's defense gave up a touchdown with 1:15 left. Atlanta got the ball back but punted. New Orleans then got the ball in overtime and scored on their first drive to end the game and give Atlanta a 43-37 loss. The next week against Cincinnati, Ryan was incredible once again, throwing for 419 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions for a 134.5 rating. Atlanta took a 5-point lead with 4:18 left following a 32-yard field goal, but Atlanta's defense allowed Andy Dalton to drive 75 yards, convert 2 fourth downs, and throw a game-winning 13-yard touchdown pass with 7 seconds left to give the Falcons a 37-36 loss. Week 11 versus Dallas. Atlanta had a 3-point lead entering the fourth quarter, but Dallas scored 2 straight touchdowns thanks to a Ryan interception to take a 19-9 lead with 12:26 left. Ryan then led Atlanta to 10 straight points of their own, a 21-yard field goal where Atlanta failed to score a touchdown despite having 2nd and 5 from the Dallas 6-yard line, followed by a Ryan touchdown pass with a minute 52 left to tie it at 19. Atlanta's defense then gave up a 51-yard drive, which ended with Dallas kicking the game-winning 42-yard field goal as time expired to give Atlanta a 22-19 loss. The 2019 season saw much of the same as 2018 for Atlanta, as the team once again finished 7-9 to miss the playoffs. Unlike 2018, Ryan was merely just okay, not great, in his 15 starts, throwing for 4,400 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions for a 92.1 rating. He missed just the 3rd game of his career with an injury, which Atlanta lost to Seattle by 7. Atlanta's defense was still sharp overall, finishing 8th in points per drive, while the defense remained anemic, finishing 27th in points allowed per drive. There weren't as many super close losses for Atlanta as in years past, but that didn't mean there weren't any at all. Week 3 versus Indianapolis, Ryan threw a touchdown pass to Julio to make it 27-24 Indy with 4:17 left, but Atlanta's defense allowed Indianapolis to run out the rest of the clock to seal the game. Week 6 versus Arizona, Ryan was excellent, throwing for 356 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions for a stellar 144.9 rating. He threw a touchdown to make it 34-33 Arizona with 1:53 left, but Atlanta kicker Matt Bryant missed the extra point. Arizona recovered the onside kick to seal the 34-33 loss for Atlanta. And finally, Week 13 versus New Orleans, Atlanta trailed by 17 with 6:32 left. Ryan then led a touchdown drive to make it 26-15 with 3:26 left. Atlanta recovered an onside kick, added a field goal to make it 26-18 with 1:56 left. Atlanta then recovered a second onside kick to get the ball near midfield with 1:54 left, but Ryan was unable to do anything with it and turned it over on downs. After several years of mediocrity, the bottom completely fell out for Atlanta in 2020 as the team finished with a 4-12 record. Ryan threw for almost 4,600 yards and 26 touchdowns, but was merely average on a per-throw basis, as was Atlanta's offense, which finished just 15th in points per drive. And you're not going to believe this, but Atlanta's defense was bad, finishing 21st in points allowed per drive. Atlanta lost an incredible 8 games by 7 points or less, including some comically bad blown leads. Dan Quinn was eventually fired after an 0-5 start, but a head coaching change didn't prevent the team from choking away games. Week 2 versus Dallas, Matt Ryan was excellent, throwing 4 touchdowns and no interceptions for a 126.3 rating. Atlanta had 1st and 10 at the Dallas 12, up 12 with 8:57 left, but settled for a field goal to take a 15-point lead with 8 minutes left. Dallas would score 2 touchdowns over the next 6 minutes to make it 39-37 with 2 minutes left, then recovered an onside kick and kicked a game-winning field goal as time expired to give Atlanta an improbable 40-39 loss. The next week versus Chicago, Atlanta had a 16-point lead entering the fourth, but failed to make it 29-10 after missing a 48-yard field goal. Chicago scored a touchdown to cut it to 10. Atlanta punted. Chicago scored another touchdown to cut it to 3. Atlanta punted again. Then Chicago scored a 3rd touchdown to make it 30-26 with 1:53 left. Ryan was then picked off at the Chicago 44-yard line with 1:14 left to end the game. Week 5 versus Carolina. Atlanta had the ball at Carolina's 5-yard line, down 7 with 8:55 left, but Ryan threw an interception. Atlanta never got the ball within 1 score the rest of the game to lose 23-16. Week 7 versus Detroit. Atlanta had 2 drives in the fourth, up 14-13, but turned it over at Detroit's 13-yard line on the first, then fumbled on the second drive to give Detroit great field position, which they used to kick a field goal to go up 16-14 with 3:21 left. Atlanta took a 22-16 lead off of a touchdown and 2-point conversion with 1:04 left, but Atlanta's defense gave up a 75-yard touchdown drive, including a game-winning touchdown pass as time expired to lose 23-22. Week 13 versus New Orleans. Atlanta had the ball at the Saints' 13-yard line, down 5 with a minute 55 left, but ended up turning the ball over after 2 runs for -7 yards and an incompletion. Atlanta got the ball back with 27 seconds left, but but a last-ditch effort ended with a Hail Mary incompletion to seal the 21-16 loss. Week 14 versus the LA Chargers. Atlanta had 3 fourth-quarter drives with the game tied at 17. The first ended in a punt after Ryan had intentional grounding on 3rd and 1 at the LA 38 with 12:40 left. The second ended with a Ryan interception on 2nd and 17 from LA's 26-yard line with 3:52 left. LA threw an interception themselves. Then the third Atlanta drive of the quarter ended with another Ryan interception from LA's 45-yard line with 36 seconds left. LA drove 48 yards to kick a game-winning 43-yard field goal as time expired to give Atlanta a 20-17 loss. Week 15 versus Tampa Bay. Ryan played well, putting up 356 yards and 3 touchdowns for a 110.6 rating. But Atlanta blew a 24-7 second-half lead, including a 27-24 fourth-quarter lead. Tampa Bay scored a go-ahead touchdown off of a 46-yard Tom Brady touchdown pass to accused rapist Antonio Brown to go up by 4 with 6:19 left. The two teams then traded punts, giving Atlanta the ball back down 4 with 2:44 left, but Atlanta turned the ball over on downs to seal the loss. And finally, Week 16 versus Kansas City. Ryan once again played well, throwing for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns for a 121.1 rating. Kansas City kicked a field goal to go up 10-7 early in the fourth. Then Ryan had Atlanta inside Kansas City's 20-yard line on the next drive, but wide receiver Brandon Powell fumbled. Kansas City punted. Then Ryan threw his second touchdown of the game to give Atlanta a 4-point lead with 4:33 left. Kansas City answered with a touchdown to go up 3 with 1:55 left. Ryan drove Atlanta into field goal range, but Atlanta's kicker missed a 39-yard field goal attempt with 14 seconds left to seal the 17-14 loss for Atlanta. Now that I've gone over Ryan's career in depth, several questions need to be answered. How much blame does he deserve for Atlanta's mediocrity, and whether or not he's a Hall of Fame quarterback? In terms of how much blame Ryan deserves, I don't believe he deserves a ton, and the reasons why are simple. In 13 years as Atlanta's starter, Ryan's offenses have finished top 10 in points per drive 10 times. On average, his offenses finished 9th in points per drive and 7th in yards per drive. That's stellar. The exact opposite can be said for his defenses. Only 2 times in 13 years has Ryan had a top 10 defense, 2010 and 2012. In those 2 years, Atlanta finished 13-3 both times. This is also partly why Ryan won an incredible 72% of his starts from 2008 to 2012, but just 45% of his starts from 2013 to 2020. In Ryan's 11 other seasons besides 2010 and 2012, his defenses have finished 17th or worse in points allowed per drive. 5 times Ryan has had a bottom 6 defense, and on average his defenses finished 21st in points allowed per drive. And it's not because of poor field position either, as Ryan's defenses have finished a disgustingly bad 26th on average in yards allowed per drive, never ranking higher than 17th in any of Ryan's 13 seasons. Some may say Atlanta's lackluster defenses may be due to the team putting so much money into the offense, but I find that to be a weak excuse. You can't just explain away almost a decade and a half of terrible defenses because of that. There are countless examples of teams with highly paid quarterbacks having elite defenses. In fact, 6 of the top 8 quarterbacks in terms of cap hit in 2020 had top 10 defensive support. Tom Brady had the highest cap hit in 2006, and his defense finished 3rd. It is fair to say Ryan has had talent around him offensively throughout his career. Julio Jones is a Hall of Famer, Roddy White was a Pro Bowler / All-Pro, Tony Gonzalez was still excellent in 5 years with Ryan, but to say Ryan is a product of the talent around him is false, as he has always put up big counting stats and his offenses have always churned out yards regardless of who is playing. A fair criticism of Ryan has been his somewhat disappointing efficiency in the red zone throughout his career, as Atlanta has finished just 15th on average at converting red zone trips into touchdowns during his 13 years. This explains why his teams almost always do better in yards than points, and why his era-adjusted touchdown percentage is underwhelming. Because of his inconsistency in the red zone and his habit of taking untimely sacks late in games at times, I will say Ryan deserves about 10 to 15% of the blame for the Falcons never winning a Super Bowl. But the biggest culprit for Ryan being ringless is easily his shitty defenses. So, is Ryan a Hall of Fame quarterback? As I alluded to earlier in the video, if Atlanta had hung on to win Super Bowl 51, I don't think there would even be a discussion. In my opinion, Ryan is a Hall of Fame quarterback, although he is obviously not on the level of the inner circle greats like Rodgers, Peyton, Marino, Mahomes, Breeze, or Steve Young. What separates Ryan from another big stats, no-ring guy like Phillip Rivers, who I don't believe to be a Hall of Famer, is that Rivers had elite talent on both sides of the ball at various times throughout his career, whereas Ryan has only had support offensively. Ryan has an MVP for playing at a historic level. Rivers never did that. Ryan led his team to a Super Bowl with his outstanding play. Rivers never did. Ryan has even even played well in a Super Bowl, which is something not even Hall of Fame quarterbacks like Peyton, Marino, Fouts, Moon, Kelly, Unitas, and Tarkenton can say. Ryan struggled in the playoffs early on, but he actually now has some of the best playoff numbers and efficiency of any quarterback in NFL history, thanks largely to his play in 2012 and 2016. If Harry Douglas never slipped late in the 2012 NFC Championship game, Ryan would most likely have 2 Super Bowl appearances on his resume. Ryan is the anti-Brady in that whatever can seem to go wrong for his teams does go wrong. There is zero doubt in my mind if Ryan was blessed with consistently good defenses like Brady, Big Ben, or Russell Wilson early in his career, he would have at least 1 Super Bowl ring and a much better win-loss percentage than he actually does. Instead, he will have to try and continue to carry shitty defenses to respectability. If only he knew how to activate the will of his defenses. Over 20 years after he last played in an NFL game, Dan Marino's name still commands respect and admiration. Marino spent 17 seasons with the Miami Dolphins, rewriting the record books and putting up numbers that are still, even by today's standards, phenomenal. Marino was a 9-time Pro Bowler and 3-time first-team All-Pro. He won over 61% of his regular season starts. He led the league in passing yards 5 times and touchdown passes 3 times. He led the Dolphins to the playoffs 10 times, and yet, as everybody knows, he never won a Super Bowl. How is it that a player so phenomenal, the most important position, never won a single Super Bowl? This video tries to explain why. Enjoy. Marino fell in the 1983 draft until the 27th pick, where the defending AFC champion Miami Dolphins and Hall of Fame coach Don Shula snatched him up. Marino began his rookie season on the bench behind incumbent starter David Woodley, but it took only 5 games before Marino became the starter in place of the ineffective kicker. Marino would go on to have one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history, throwing for 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in just 9 starts. The Dolphins finished the year 12-4 thanks to a stout defense and Marino's precision passing. They got a first-round bye and played the Seattle Seahawks at home in the divisional round. In his first ever playoff game, Marino was solid, not spectacular, throwing 2 touchdowns but also 2 interceptions. However, he led Miami on a touchdown drive to take a 3-point lead with 4 minutes left. Then, bad luck struck. After his defense gave back the lead with a touchdown with 1:15 left, kick returner Fulton Walker fumbled the ball back to Seattle, setting them up with a field goal to make it a 27-20 game. Then Walker fumbled again on Seattle's next kickoff, ending the game for good. Miami committed 5 turnovers on the day, 2 interceptions from Marino, and 3 other fumbles. It sounds strange to say about a rookie quarterback, but 1983 was probably the most complete Dolphins team Marino ever had in terms of ground support and defensive support. In terms of missed opportunities in the Marino era, 1983 is way up there. If Dan Marino was ever going to win a ring, 1984 would have been the year. His 1984 season is legendary and without question a top 5 season ever by a quarterback. Marino led the league in every positive statistic you can think of, and he did so putting up numbers that even in 2020 are ridiculous. 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns with a 108.9 passer rating. It wasn't just the individual success though. The Dolphins finished 14-2 and had the best offense in the league, scoring at least 28 points in 16 of 19 games. They earned the 1 seed in the AFC and destroyed both the Seahawks and Steelers in the divisional round and AFC Championship game. Marino was particularly dominant in the AFC Championship game against his hometown Steelers, who famously passed him up in the 1983 draft. He threw for 421 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 45-28 run. Unfortunately for Marino and the Dolphins, their Super Bowl opponent would be the 15-1 juggernaut San Francisco 49ers, led on offense by future Hall of Fame coach Bill Walsh and future Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Montana, and on defense by future Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, in addition to many other very good players. The game started out well for Marino and the Dolphins, taking a 10-7 lead after 1 quarter, but then the roof caved in. The 49ers' well-oiled machine dominated from that point on, particularly in the second quarter, scoring 21 unanswered to take a commanding 28-10 lead before the Dolphins added 2 field goals to go into halftime down 28-16. The second half was more of the same, with the 49ers getting constant pressure on Marino, sacking him 4 times while the Dolphins defense was unable to slow down the dinking and dunking 49ers offense. The final score was 38-16 49ers. Montana won Super Bowl MVP after putting up 331 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions through the air, and 59 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. The 49ers also controlled the clock, having the ball for 37 minutes compared to just 23 for Miami. Marino's final stat line was not very good, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions with a 66.9 passer rating, but as what would be the case for most of his career, a lot of his playoff interceptions came when his team was already down a ton and he was trying to force throws. This would end up being the only Super Bowl appearance of Marino's illustrious career, and unlike fellow one-and-done Super Bowl quarterbacks Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, he was unable to cash in on his lone opportunity. Dan Marino was once again named first-team All-Pro in 1985 after throwing for 4,137 yards and 30 touchdowns, both leading the league, and he's famously the only quarterback to defeat the vaunted 1985 Chicago Bears. Marino took a noticeable step back statistically from his legendary 1984 season, but the Dolphins' offense was still potent, finishing 4th in points per game and finishing with a 12-4 record to earn another first-round bye. By this point, however, the defense was starting to see signs of slippage, going from 1st in points per game allowed in Marino's rookie year to 7th in 1984 to 12th in 1985. Still, everybody expected Miami to return to the Super Bowl, especially after Marino led a furious 18-point second-half comeback and a 24-21 win against the Cleveland Browns in the divisional round. The Dolphins' AFC Championship game opponent would be the wild-card New England Patriots, who had already given Miami 2 difficult showdowns in the regular season. Despite this, everybody was expecting a rematch of Miami-Chicago in Super Bowl 20, but instead they got a New England blowout. The Patriots ended up shocking the Dolphins in the Orange Bowl by a score of 31-14. The Dolphins committed a season-high 6 turnovers, giving the Patriots pristine field position all game long. Much like the 49ers the year before, the Patriots dominated the time of possession 40 minutes to 20, and also racked up 255 yards on the ground. Marino had a subpar day, throwing 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions on 48 attempts, most of which once again came when his team was down big, while his teammates committed 4 fumbles to shut down any chance the team had of closing the gap on the scoreboard. It was a total team failure, and Marino is not absolved of blame, but as it turns out, this would be the last time for a while the Dolphins would get anywhere near this far again. 1986 saw Marino get named first-team All-Pro for the 3rd straight year. He had another ridiculous season, throwing for 4,746 yards and 44 touchdowns, although he did add 23 interceptions. Still, the Dolphins finished 1st in points per game, but finished just 8-8 and missed the playoffs due to their porous defense, which finished 26th out of 28 teams in points per game allowed. The defense allowed 50 points twice and 30-plus points in 7 of 16 games. The team still might have been able to get a wild card spot if not for a brutal 51-45 overtime loss to the Jets early in the year and a 34-27 loss in the last week of the season to the Patriots, where they blew 7-point fourth-quarter leads in both games. Marino had several bad performances and losses, but his offense was the only thing keeping the Dolphins above water, no pun intended. The strike-shortened 1987 season saw Marino continue his excellent play when he actually played that ace. The Dolphins finished the season 8-7, but that includes 3 strike games with scabs. In Marino's 12 starts, he went 7-5 and had a 16-game pace of 4,327 yards and 35 touchdowns. The offense was still great as they finished 7th in points per game, while the defense was once again below average, finishing 16th in points per game allowed. The Dolphins barely missed the playoffs for several reasons. They blew huge leads in the season-opening road loss to New England 21-7 and a 21-0 lead in a home 34-31 overtime loss to Buffalo, and threw up a clunker in a de facto playoff game in the last week of the season, a 24-10 home loss to New England. Much like with Drew Brees, it's difficult to gauge how much blame Marino deserves, since he was the only thing standing between the Dolphins being respectable and being a bottom feeder. The 1988 season was a mess for both Miami and Marino individually. Well, at least relatively in Marino's case. He led the NFL in passing yards with 4,434 and threw 28 touchdowns, but he also threw 23 interceptions, and the Dolphins' offense was below average, finishing 17th in points per game in addition to their shitty defense, 24th in points per game allowed. The team finished 6-10, but not their usual 6-10. There were several losses which totally fall on the defense, such as 44-30 and 38-34 losses to New York, and a 31-28 loss to Indianapolis. Yet there were also several losses where the Dolphins' offense completely failed to show up, such as a 15-13 loss to Indianapolis, a 9-6 loss to the Bills, and a 6-3 loss to the Patriots, which featured 3 missed field goals. It's notable notable to mention that the Dolphins kickers finished the season with a putrid 52.2% on field goals, which was well below the league average of 71.7%. Also, by this time, the divisional rival Buffalo Bills were emerging as one of the NFL's elite, in large part due to their excellent drafting, while the Dolphins had regressed around Marino due to missing on high draft picks such as Lorenzo Hampton, John Bosa, Eric Humero, and their upcoming 1989 first-round pick, Sammy Smith. 1989 saw Miami miss the playoffs for the fourth straight season, finishing 8-8 after starting out a strong 7-4. Marino had his worst statistical season of his career to that point, falling just short of 4,000 yards and throwing 24 touchdowns to 22 interceptions with a 76.9 passer rating. The Dolphins' offense finished 15th in points per game and 22nd in points per game allowed. While Marino had his shortcomings, the Dolphins' disgustingly bad rushing attack was the bigger culprit for their inability to finish drives. The team averaged a league-worst 3.3 yards per carry, in addition to blowing a 7-point fourth-quarter lead in a 40-33 loss to the Jets and an 11-point fourth-quarter lead in a 27-24 loss to the Bills on opening weekend. Unlike 1988, however, there weren't any losses where the defense did its job, as in all 8 losses, the team gave up at least 26 points. Keep in mind, this was when the league average points per game was much lower than it is today at just 20.6. Marino, despite his worst ever season to this point, led 4 game-winning drives to keep the team's record from being even worse. Still, Marino's production had taken a noticeable dip for 2 straight years, and while he was still one of the league's best quarterbacks, he was no longer the wonderkind who was putting up GOAT-type numbers. 1990 saw the Dolphins finally return to the playoffs after a 4-year hiatus with a 12-4 record. This was in large part due to their defense improving dramatically to 4th in points per game allowed. The team's offense continued to be just okay, finishing 14th in points per game. Marino threw for quote-unquote just 3,563 yards and 21 touchdowns in 16 starts, but he also cut down big time on his interceptions, throwing just 11. The ground game, however, continued to be disgustingly bad, finishing 26th in yards per carry. Despite the Dolphins' great record, they failed to win their division, as the 13-3 Buffalo Bills earned the crown as well as a first-round bye. It should be noted that the Dolphins' 4 losses on the season came to very good teams: the eventual Super Bowl champion 13-3 New York Giants, the playoff-bound 10-6 Washington redacted, the aforementioned 13-3 eventual AFC champion Buffalo Bills, and eventual 12-4 AFC runner-up Los Angeles Raiders. After a thrilling 17-16 win over the Kansas City Chiefs in the wild-card round at home, which saw Marino throw 2 fourth-quarter touchdown passes to overcome a 16-3 fourth-quarter deficit, the Dolphins traveled to Buffalo for a divisional round showdown with their hated rivals. The Dolphins' elite defense completely shit its pants, giving up 44 points in a 44-34 season-ending loss. The Dolphins at one point in the fourth quarter made it a 30-27 game, but in the end, Jim Kelly threw for 339 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Thurman Thomas ran for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bills put up almost 500 yards of offense. Marino, for his part, fought valiantly, throwing for 323 yards, 3 touchdowns, and even running for another. But the Bills and their famed K-gun offense were just too much. Even though the 90s Bills have become a meme today for losing 4 straight Super Bowls, they were an absolutely dominant team in the class of the AFC during Marino's prime years, which is an extremely overlooked aspect of his lack of Super Bowl rings/chances. The 1991 season saw Marino earn another Pro Bowl berth due to his 3,970 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 85.8 passer rating, all elite numbers in those days. He also threw just 13 interceptions. The Dolphins' offense finished 6th in points per game, but was once again held back by a shitty defense that finished 24th in points per game allowed. Overall, the team finished 8-8 and missed the playoffs for the 5th time in 6 years. The running game continued to be the biggest Achilles heel for Miami, both offensively and defensively. They finished just 21st in yards per carry on offense and were a league worst defensively in yards per carry allowed. Despite this, the team blew fourth quarter leads in half of their 8 losses. A 24-21 lead to the Bills in Week 1, a 13-10 lead in Week 8 versus Houston, which saw aforementioned draft bust Sammy Smith brutally fumble on the opponent 1-yard line late with a chance to win the game, a 23-10 lead to the lowly Chargers in Week 16, and a 2017 lead to the New York Jets in Week 17, which saw a go-ahead touchdown drive led by Marino with 45 seconds left get wasted. This team easily and probably should have have been in the playoffs with a 9-7 or 10-6 record, but the defense continued to collapse at the worst possible times. Marino was no longer a young pup at this point, and the clock was beginning to tick ever so slightly. 1992 saw Miami return to the playoffs after finishing 11-5. Marino was once again named to the Pro Bowl after leading the league in passing yards and throwing for 24 touchdowns. For what it's worth, he also led the league with 6 game-winning drives. Miami's offense finished 8th in points per game, and the defense finished 11th in points per game allowed, although the ground game continued to be porous for Miami. Winning the AFC East and getting a first-round bye was huge, as was the team dismantling San Diego in the divisional round 31-0 to set up a home AFC Championship game with those pesky Buffalo Bills. The Bills were back in the AFC Championship game despite having to start backup quarterback Frank Reich the previous 2 weeks, which included the infamous 32-point comeback against Houston. Both teams were sloppy early on as the first quarter ended in a 3-3 stalemate. Buffalo then started to pull away, putting up 23 unanswered points to take a 26-3 lead at one point in the fourth quarter before Miami added a garbage time touchdown pass from Marino and another Buffalo field goal to reach the final score, a 29-10 win for Buffalo. The Dolphins committed 5 turnovers, 2 of which were interceptions from Marino and 3 of which were fumbles, including one on a kickoff to start the second half. Marino's final numbers were bad, throwing 2 interceptions and a 56.5 passer rating, although he had multiple incredible deep passes dropped that could have made this a much different game. He was also sacked 4 times by Buffalo's elite defensive line, and his running game was, unsurprisingly, non-existent. Much like their last AFC Championship game lost to New England in 1985, this was a total team failure for Miami, and it would end up being the closest Marino ever got to going back to a Super Bowl. Through just over 4 games, 1993 looked like it could be Marino's best season since 1987. Unfortunately for Marino and the Dolphins, he sustained a torn Achilles in their 5th game versus Cleveland. Marino was never mobile in the first place, but this injury would make him even more of a statue moving forward. The Dolphins went 4-1 in Marino's 5 starts and even started the season at 9-2 before losing their last 5 games to finish 9-7 and miss the playoffs. 1994 would end up being Dan Marino's last great statistical season in terms of value, as he threw for almost 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns to lead the Dolphins to a 10-6 record and AFC East title. The team's offense was elite, finishing 3rd, while the defense was, you guessed it, below average, finishing 17th in points per game allowed. There was plenty of blame to go around for the Dolphins only, quote-unquote, winning 10 games. The defense deserves the blame for a 42-31 loss to Buffalo and 38-35 loss to Minnesota, while Marino's offense deserves more of the blame for several close losses, such as a 17-14 loss to Chicago, which saw a blocked 45-yard field goal as time expired, a 16-13 overtime loss to Pittsburgh, and a 10-6 loss to Indianapolis, where the offense had first and goal at the 2-yard line late in the fourth quarter, but couldn't punch it in. Still, the team and Marino extracted some revenge for Super Bowl 19 against Joe Montana and Kansas City in the wild card round in a 27-17 win. They would then go on the road to face the eventual AFC champion San Diego Chargers in what would be one of the biggest heartbreaking losses in the Marino era. Marino came out on fire in the first half, throwing 3 touchdown passes to take a 21-6 lead going into halftime. But the second half was when the wheels fell off. The Dolphins gave up a safety on a run play to make it 21-8 and then allowed a 24-yard touchdown run to make it 21-15. The offenses stalled until San Diego took a 22-21 lead off of a touchdown with 35 seconds left. Marino then led a drive that set up the team with a 48-yard field goal attempt to win the game, but kicker Pete Stoyanovich missed it. San Diego controlled the ball for almost the entire third quarter, and several dumb Miami penalties halted their next 2 drives before Marino's last drive, which ended with the missed field goal. It's tough to blame Marino for this loss. Not every quarterback is fortunate enough to have a kicker make their clutch 48-yard field goals in the playoffs. The Dolphins made the playoffs in 1995, although they underachieved with just a 9-7 record. Marino missed 2 games, but was named to the Pro Bowl for the 9th and final time of his historic career. He was on a 16-game pace for almost 4,200 yards and 27 touchdowns. The offense finished 7th, while the defense finished 10th. Pretty good balance, which makes the 9-7 record more disappointing. Miami lost the 2 games Marino sat out by a combined 4 points, but they also had several close losses with Marino, including a loss to Indianapolis where good old Pete Stoyanovich missed a game-winning 49-yard field goal attempt as time expired. Marino did lead several clutch drives to win close games against Atlanta and Cincinnati, however, and barely squeak into the playoffs where they would once again get to face their old nemesis Buffalo in the wild card round. Buffalo, at this point, wasn't the same powerhouse as they were in the early 90s, but they were still formidable. They scored on 4 of their first 5 drives to take a 24-0 lead, while the Dolphins wouldn't put points on the board until the 4th quarter when the game was already out of reach. The final score of 37-22 makes the game seem much closer than it actually was, as most of Miami's yards and all of their points came in garbage time during the 4th quarter. Buffalo racked up 536 yards, including 341 on the ground. Marino threw for over 400 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he also had 3 interceptions and couldn't get the offense going earlier. Still, when your defense gives up 37 points and 536 yards, it's not all his fault. This was another team failure by Miami in what would end up being the last game in Don Shula's legendary career. 1996 was the beginning of the Jimmy Johnson era in Miami, and it would be tumultuous as he and Marino would repeatedly clash over how to handle the offense. Marino would end up missing effectively 4 games in 1996, which the Dolphins went 1-3 in. Overall, the team went 8-8 and missed the playoffs. They were 13th in points per game and 17th in points per game allowed, a truly mediocre team across the board. Marino's numbers and efficiency were still excellent, but at 35 years old, he wasn't capable of taking over games the way he used to, and the team's offense completely no-showed in back-to-back 17-7 losses to Oakland and the New York Giants late in the year to end any hope the team had at making the playoffs. 1997 was similar to 1996. The Dolphins were a pretty mediocre team across the board, but unlike the previous year, they finished 9-7 and made the playoffs as a wild card. Marino started all 16 games and led the league in pass attempts, but threw for just 16 touchdowns and had to leave 2 games early due to injury. Both games Miami lost, including an inexcusable 9-6 loss to Buffalo. The season also saw the team blow a 15-point 4th quarter lead in a 36-33 overtime loss to Chicago and a 2-point loss to New England. Still, Marino led 3 game-winning drives, and his efficiency on a per-drop-back basis was well above average. He looked like he still had enough left in the tank for another Super Bowl run.